Welcome to another episode of SteeleWatching, which is the podcast for Remington Steele fans. I am one of your hosts. I am Eric, and it's cold.
And I am new and improved.
Yeah, if not being able to see anything is new and improved, you are definitely new and improved.
Sure, that's what we're going with. And I am Sara.
All right. Well, this episode of SteeleWatching is... I was going to say Steel Flying High, but no, that was season 1. This is High Flying Steel.
This is going to be a mistake we make more than once.
Yes, we just take the words and scramble them around, and then we have eggs. No.
Kind of like they
Anyway. So, here we go. High Flying Steel. Got it right. First aired on January 17, 1984. It was written by George Lee Marshall and directed by Karen Arthur. And I'm going to say, I think this is the first female director we've had.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've got a female director. We've had some female writers, but
right.
I think you're right. I think this is the first female director that we've had.
Yeah, I believe so. I didn't go back and look through every single episode credits, but I think it is.
To be fair, most of them are just Seymour Robbie, so.
Hey, Seymour! How you doing, buddy? Seymour! We're never going to let that one live on. No. I mean, die.
Die.
Whatever. One of these days we might hear from Seymour. That would be fun. Anyway.
That would be super fun.
Yes. TV Guide listing is what I went with. And it goes like this. A name spoken to Mildred at an innocuous séance draws Laura and Steele to a sleazy circus where they pose as a high-flying trapeze act to catch a murderer.
Innocuous
I'll disagree
séance.
What's
innocuous séance?
That's where, no, that's an inoculation. Well, no, I'm going to disagree with two words in there slightly. Innocuous is one of them. Because really, it's not innocuous. It's not harmless because they're ripping off people. So how can anything where you're ripping off people really be innocuous? And sleazy. It's low end. And
I would argue with sleazy too, because at the end of the day, whether or not you buy in, you're still going there to have a good time. And it seems like that's what Mildred got. So
yeah, and it is low end. I mean, it's not like your Barnum and Bubbies, Barnum and Bailey's. Oh, they're going to sue me for Bubbies.
Yeah. Hey, to be fair, they killed an elephant, so they're not exactly high end either.
Well, hey, what's an elephant between friends?
It was a big one.
Anyway,
big elephant.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll disagree with the term sleazy only to the extent that it's not really horrible.
It's a small circus.
It's just it's small, low end. It's the kind of circus that goes around and visits the smaller towns that the big circuses just can't be bothered with. And it's not as flashy, and it doesn't have all the big name acts and maybe some of the acts that are as grandiose as a big circus, but it still, it brings fun to people who wouldn't otherwise get one. So
I have a question
okay with
for you with regards to circuses, because maybe this is an American thing, because I always see movies and TV shows where they have traveling circuses. There's always a circus episode, usually in these types of shows. I've never seen a traveling circus here in Canada. Never. I've never seen a circus, period. Is this a thing that, does it still happen? Is it something that used to happen? It doesn't happen anymore? Is it something does it just happen in the United States? Because, I'm assuming
we patented it. We patented circuses. Nobody else can have them. They're strictly...
I just mean, if there's a circus here, it's probably something that's a fixed spot that you're going specifically. I've never seen a traveling circus. Never.
Yeah. Well, I have been to a circus, I would say once, and we took our kids, and I don't remember what it was. I don't think it was Barnum and Bailey's, but it was like Ringling Brothers. And yes, that's a traveling circus. Barnum and Bailey's is a traveling circus. I don't know how much traveling they do anymore. I don't even know. I presume they're still around. I didn't bother to look because that wasn't a question I had. I'm going to say that
you didn't do your research, and neither did I.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's less common than it used to be. A lot less common.
Yeah. Well, maybe whoever's listening can tell us if they've seen a circus, been to a circus, if they know if they're still out there.
Yeah, I would say it had been back in the 80s that my wife and I took our kids to a circus. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, fairs are a thing, like traveling fairs. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
But circuses I've never encountered.
I'm not sure how much fairs themselves travel. I know that there are companies that put on fairs that travel. But for example, the county fair, that's run by the county, or the state fair is run by the state, but they hire these event people that bring in the rides and a lot of the attractions and the carnival, the midway and the booths and all that other stuff. So they bring those in. Plus they have some like local vendors and such, I'm sure, that show up, and they have the 4-H and all the other things that typically go with those fairs that are local. But in a sense, what you're talking about there, the groups of people that travel with the fair, I don't know what you want to call them, fair paraphernalia, the rides and such. In a sense, they are a circus, but without the animals. I mean,
that's kind of, and even some of the fairs have animals, but again, that's usually the local thing and not like the people that move from place to place. So
right. But that's usually like the 4-H for the displays and such as that, not the acts, not the animal acts that I'm familiar with anyway.
So in London, Ontario, we have a yearly fair that comes. Yeah, I usually do. Like the other London, the one that's not as exciting. We have a yearly fair in September. It's usually the second week of September, called the Western Fair, and it's more than 100 years old, I think, or 100 on the nose. I'm not sure. And it started out as an agricultural fair. So it started out with like the animals on the 4-H and whatever, and expanded to have the midway and the booze and all the stuff. But it also does have this year there was a dog show. So not the acts that we're used to seeing with regards to like the bearded lady or the breathing fire, but they do have, they have concerts. Now they have they'll have one year they had motorcycle stunt driving and stuff like that. So there is some like circus but there's no big top and whatnot. So I guess that's close as I've ever gotten.
Yeah, I think circuses are largely, especially the smaller ones, but largely dying out, and you've got a few of the big names left over, and then you've got some of the things that are done like in Las Vegas, where you've got what was the two lion guys? Siegfried and Roy.
Siegfried and Roy, yeah.
Yeah. So you've got those that are permanent shows at places like Las Vegas. But yeah, I think that the traveling circus is largely a thing of the past, in part because of the expense.
And probably the animal cruelty issues.
That's where I was going to go, is that there's a lot of people who have issues with animals being used in circuses in that way. And so that's caused a lot of, I'm sure, financial impact on circuses. So it's a combination of various things all bundled up under a term called economics. So,
which is not what this podcast is about.
Yes. Let's get on to the real thing here. The episode. So it starts out and it's at night, and Mildred is making her way through the various portions of the Cordoro's Fabulous Funtime Circus. And
what a name.
Apparently she is a séance freak, and she
this does not surprise me at all for Mildred. Like nothing about that, not a surprise.
So it starts out with various people walking around and shots of that, and then there's a booth that they show where there's two guys in the booth. One is younger, who we will learn is Guy Nickerson, and he can be heard declaring that everyone's a winner tonight, while the older guy offers 3 shots for $1, promising that hitting 3 ducks will win the contestant $100 in cash, and it's only 3 shots for $1. But after a minute, the younger man tells the older man, hold down the fort, and takes off. And then we again see Mildred walking through the crowd while this young man from the booth seems to be trailing her. And then she passes the Ferris wheel where another young man, who we will learn is named Max, he's operating the contraption, and he notices her. Then we see a large tent with a large sign overhead that reads, Fresco Zapata, world's greatest seer. And then we see a middle-aged man with his, what?
I have a question. Do you guys have, do you guys have that pop, that drink, Fresca?
Fresca, yes.
Yeah, every time I heard this guy's name, that's what I thought of. Anyway, carry on.
Yes. We're going to turn this into a giant ad, folks, for circuses and Fresca.
Product placement, yeah.
And we're making absolutely no money on it, which obviously
None
we're doing
whatsoever.
wrong. Anyway.
Buy Fresca.
Anyway, at this tent, this building with the sign, we see a middle-aged man with his shirt unbuttoned a bit too far.
Yeah.
And a medallion hanging around his neck, and he's wearing a long weathered jacket and sporting a cheesy mustache.
Oh, yeah.
He's leaning against the wall in an open doorway, and this is Fresco Zapata. Then Delilah Zapata, a middle-aged woman with wild, wavy blonde hair, which is important to note.
Yes.
Wearing a faux harem costume, having a large snake draped around her neck, and she is the wife of Fresco, comes up telling him, crank up the charm machine, lover boy. The live one's back. So obviously Mildred has been there before.
Oh,
this is not her first time. She is well known.
She is at this point. I think that's probably why, because I noticed, like, when you see them all following her, they all look nervous, right? Mm-hmm. And it's obviously meant to be a bit of a trick, because we as the audience are supposed to think, okay, they're going to hurt her, right? They're watching her, they're trailing her, whatever. But after we see the séance and we know what the grift is, it's clear that they're looking nervous because they're running out of people to put in this room that could potentially be strangers, right? Like, there's only so many people that work at this circus. And she notices one of them. I think it's Delilah. She says, you've been here before. And Delilah's like, no. Right. So, like, they only got so many wigs and stuff.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. I was thinking about the fact that they were nervous that she was a detective, which both of those are things that we'll get to later.
That too,
but I hadn't thought about the fact that, they've only got so many people working there. They can only have so many shills, which is actually what Fresco tells Delilah here, says, get the shills, Cupcake, whoever's not working except him.
Exactly.
Pointing to the snake.
Yeah. Because, like, and my guess is they probably don't have, if they move around a lot, they probably don't have people coming, like, that often over and over and over again for a séance. They probably have one or two that maybe come again. But once you've had your séance and you've had your future predicted, usually you're like, oh, cool, I'm satisfied. And then you go off. Yeah. But Mildred's determined.
Well, the other thing is, how many people go to a fair or a circus more than once? At a stretch.
Yeah, exactly.
I just as an example,
it's expensive. You only have so much money.
That is true. Very expensive to get in, and very expensive to even just be there. I mean, it's
everything's
not as bad as Disneyland, but a hamburger for $25, that's a little bit excessive. But the thing about all of this, and I'll use myself as an example. I worked at the state fair for several years for a guy selling industrial equipment. But believe it or not, industrial equipment at a state fair. Yes, it's a thing here in Alaska.
No, we have them too. Like, you have the booths and everything. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But during that time that I was working there, over those few years, I had a chance to get out, wander and see some of the attractions. And of course, there was always this one food booth that I always try to hit at least once, because they had great Reuben sandwiches. But it was one of those things where, okay, I saw it last year. This is, these are all the same. Oh, okay, yeah. And then the third year, it's like, oh yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
And so by the time you're done, my wife and I hadn't been to the fair in probably 5 or 6 years, and we only went this last year because it was our anniversary day. So we went out, and one of the things that we do like to do when we go to the fair, about the only thing that we really even go there for, is to visit the crafts hall where all the quilts are.
Oh, I like those
my wife
too,
is
yeah.
a quilter.
Those are really cool.
My wife's a quilter. I love quilts. My wife complained that when we got married, I only came with 4 quilts.
Oh, well, how dare you?
Really, slacking on the job there.
Was that your dowry?
But it's the type of thing where why spend the money to go see the same thing over and over again? And that's what you're talking about here is most people are, once they've been to the fair or the circus that year or for a couple of years, they're not going to go back. So they wouldn't need that many shills, except for Mildred.
Usually if you go, you're either going on a date if you're single, you're going with your kids if you're a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, it's expensive, especially for families. You take your kids, you got more than one kid, you're spending money to get in, you're buying the food, you're buying the games, the ride tickets, etc. So you're going to go once, maybe twice if it's there for a while, but you're not going to go over and over again because
no.
Yeah, so they run out of shills, and they need to put on the show for Mildred, right? So
yes. So anyway, Delilah leaves to go get the shills. We see Mildred approaching the doorway, and she's greeted by Fresco, turning on the false charm. Calls her a glamorous private detective. He kisses her hand, telling her that he knew he would be lucky tonight. And as she giggles, she explains that she just thought she'd try another night in the beyond. And he asks, a respite from your world of dangers and deceptions? And she kind of dodges the question. Well, more or less.
Yeah, Mildred.
And he leads her through the doorway into the building, and we see Guy Nickerson, who had been following her, stop outside of the doorway. Well, next we're inside, and there's a table covered with a red cloth, and in the center of the table is a circular board marked with numbers and letters, and a glass ball on a pedestal in the middle of the circle. And, of course, candles placed around the edge of the table outside that wooden circle. And another woman is already sitting at the table as the man seats Mildred at the table, and he steps away back through a back curtain. And this is where your comment was.
Yeah.
It's Delilah, but she's not a blonde now. She doesn't have the faux harem costume on. She hasn't got the snake. She's got straight black hair, dressed in black leather, wearing a black leather hat and a leather choker. And Mildred does recognize her.
She looks like a beat poet. She's got like that,
Oh, like out of Extremely Goofy Movie. Yes, definitely. Good movie. Go see it, people. Or get the DVD, Blu-ray. While it's still available on DVD and Blu-ray, because Disney is one of those companies that's eliminating all physical media.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
I could do an entire hour on that alone.
Yeah. A company who is renowned for rewriting their movies.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's 1984. No, what you think you saw was never existed. Oh, Animal Farm. No, that was never a rule. Anyway, Mildred recognizes her and comments that she's been there before. And almost before she's even got the comment out of her mouth, the woman, in a very flat tone, says no. And then slightly less hostile tone says, first time. And then we see in the back of the room, Fresco has opened a trunk filled with costume accessories, and he pushes them aside to reveal a metal box with a rotary switch on top. And around the switch are strips of masking tape, each with a name written on it. David, Karen, Joe, Joan, and John.
So here's a question. What happens when they run out of names for Mildred? Because presumably, when she's been there before, was this the first time that they said that somebody wanted to, that there was a true love waiting for her and they were going to give her a name? Or because if she's been there multiple times, there's only so many male names that she could turn up, and if she goes there and keeps getting a different name, Mildred's got some fun times in her future.
Well, of course, if she's been there multiple times and they've got limited male names, they could just repeat the same name because, oh yes, it's the same man we had before.
It's the same one. He wants to talk to you. Yeah, it could be.
He's definitely the one. We don't have a last name, but oh yes, the third time his name is John.
John is such a
generic.
I putting aside the fact that Turk is somebody that is an actual character, you wouldn't want a name that unique for a con like this. You'd want something generic so that you could say,
Right.
oh yeah, Karen or John, or no offense to any Karens and Johns out there, but these are not, in the 80s, weren't rare names. Like, there were lots of people with these names. So
Yeah.
it'd be
So
easy enough
the
to,
chances were that
yeah.
you were going to encounter somebody with that name
For
in
sure. Yeah.
the not too distant future, you know, within the month
Yep.
or whatever. So, oh yeah. Yeah. These people, they're good at their job.
They know what they're doing. This is a good setup.
Yeah. Anyway, so he turns the switch on the knob so that the indicator points to John, and he closes the lid and begins changing his clothes. Well, back in the room, we see Max, the young man who had been operating the Ferris wheel. He's pushing in a wheelchair to the room, and in the chair is a red-haired young woman, Christy Cordaro, who reminds me very much of Frida from Peanuts. And she's... I'm sorry.
Kind of, yeah.
Anyway, she's the owner of Cordaro's Fabulous Funtime Circus. And so Mildred greets them, and the woman responds, but the young man remains silent and takes a seat beside the wheelchair. Isn't it convenient that they already have a space around the table for a wheelchair?
Well, I mean,
I'm just curious.
Hey, they're accessible, so that's nice. Like, this is a diverse and inclusive circus, but also,
and they do have a short person that had been working one of the booths. So
yeah,
you know,
so yeah, I think that's it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, and the wheelchair space had the blue lines and the little painted symbol. Yeah.
Totally not a coincidence. Not at all.
No, absolutely not. Just we don't know how that happened. Anyway, suddenly the curtains are thrown open, and we see Fresco has replaced his jacket with a black and red robe, and he's wearing a turban-like hat. Because, I mean, after all, he's supposed to be a seer. You got to look the part, right?
Yeah.
He steps over to Mildred and engages in some minor flattery while Delilah murmurs to Christy that if Mildred's a private detective, then she's Jane Fonda.
It's a good line. It's a good line.
Fresco takes his seat, begins his act with a short speech, and then begins making humming, buzzing sounds with his mouth. And then he continues his mumbo-jumbo, throwing in a bit more flattery toward Mildred. And then as he calls upon Rupert, his supposed spirit guide, we see under the table as he bumps a switch with his knee, and the wind begins blowing, and the candles are blown out, and the lights go dim. We see
I gotta
Fresco.
say, if I were in Mildred's position, I would be convinced. Like, this is, they would have, no wonder Mildred keeps coming back. Like, I would be like, oh my God, this is a real deal. I'm coming every night. I want to know what my future holds. They're too good.
I suppose you would also believe it if a guy pulled a penny out from your ear, but anyway.
No, see, here's the thing. Like, I'm not a person that believes in this kind of stuff, but like, I've also never been to something that's this sophisticated as a con. Like,
well, that's true. Most people probably haven't.
I had a friend that took me to like a psychic fair in university, and I went along because I was game. I was like, sure, whatever. But like, these were all people that just sort of sat there and used like those techniques that they use to kind of read you and then make educated guesses as to, your future and blah, blah, blah. But like, this is actually like the lights are going out and the wind is picking up, and I would be sitting there going, holy crap, this is all real. So yeah, they had me. I would.
And it's this, along with some of the scenery and the sets, the exterior sets that we see, that make me wonder how often this circus really moves.
That's the thing. Yeah. Cause this is a big setup. Like, this takes a lot, especially with the séance.
Yeah, and when you look at some of the booths that they have, they're not soft-sided structures. They're hard-sided structures made out of plywood and whatever. And so some of them, if they're designed correctly, can be collapsed and folded up and put on a truck to be moved from place to place. But it's just a combination of things. One being that they've got all this sophisticated electronics that has a basement underneath.
Yeah.
Makes me think that they haven't moved for a while. But
probably not.
Anyway, that's a side point. Anyway, so let's see, where were we here? Yes, we see Fresco continuing to use his knees and his feet to manipulate switches. And then a spotlight falls on the glass ball resting on the pedestal in the middle of the table. And then
looks
the
like
ball
a snow
moves
globe
toward Mildred. Yeah. if we shake it really hard, look, it's winter. Fresco tells Mildred
bought it from the dollar store and just thought it would be good.
Yeah, for $15.95 from the dollar store.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
Fresco tells Mildred that Rupert sees a man in her future, a man with insatiable thirsts that only you can quench.
The Dark Prince. He sees the Dark Prince.
No, this is Mildred, not Charlotte Knight. Anyway, Mildred
right.
begins to beg to know the man's name. He's not, Fresco not unexpectedly claims that the answer's unclear, but the supposed Rupert supposedly knows, and that it is Mildred and Mildred alone that Rupert wishes to address. And of course, during the process, we see the glimpse of the shills alternately smirking or rolling their eyes.
Yeah, they're not exactly subtle.
Yeah, no. I obviously, they not only have they seen this act before, but I'm going to say that he's even farther over the top than normal, because normally
exactly.
You want your shills to at least go along and play with it and not be obvious that this is ridiculous. Anyway, Mildred implores Rupert to tell her who her mystery man is, because she just has to know. And then again, we see Fresco manipulating switches, after which the ball begins to move again. And this time it's moving toward the letters around the outer edge of the board. And as the ball moves to the various letters, Mildred reads them out. T-U-R-K. But Mildred is so focused on the moving globe, she fails to notice the confused and distressed glances around from the others to each other. And the red-haired woman gestures with her hand, and Fresco, who's leading the show, of course, begins to try and guide Mildred to the door, telling her not to wait to meet her destiny. Or is that her density?
Okay, you're reading my mind, because I was tempted to say that, and I thought, no, I don't want to be a smart aleck. I'm just going to keep quiet.
You are my density.
My destiny. Back to the Future, if anyone else is wondering what the heck we're talking about.
Oh, yes. Anyway, Mildred tries to ask questions of Fresco, but he deflects, not wanting her to remain any longer, and so he pushes her out the door, closing it behind her. Outside, Mildred excitedly leaves the circus to seek out the man who is her density. I've got it written right there. Back to the Future joke there.
I like how you insert your jokes. Make joke here. Be witty.
Well, I'd forgotten that I put it here. I saw it earlier in my notes, and I thought I'd forgotten to write it in, so I had to throw it. Anyway, as she's leaving, Guy Nickerson, who had followed her earlier, has been waiting for her to come out, and he again begins following her. But there is someone else. It's a dark figure moving across the top of the buildings of the circus, following one of them.
Only the shadow knows.
Hey, Phantom of the Paradise.
See, I didn't write that joke in. I don't write my witticisms in. They just come naturally. So. Well,
see, I'm not spontaneous enough to do that. So I've got to plan them all in advance. So, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of like Jack Benny, when he was accused by, who was it? Fred Allen. Fred Allen told Jack Benny that he couldn't belch or he couldn't ad-lib a belch after a Hungarian dinner. And Jack Benny's response was, "You wouldn't say that if my writers were here."
That's funny.
Anyway, where are we? Yes, back in the fake seance room, the four remaining individuals are not happy. Former snake charmer turned biker chick Delilah pulls off her black hair wig, slams it down, and angrily asks Fresco, "Are you out of your mind?" And Fresco indignantly asks her if she really thinks he'd bring up Turk. Max, somewhat angrily, which is surprised because he was so quiet and absolutely silent up to this point, asks, "Well, if you didn't, then who did?" And of course, Delilah snidely remarks that, "Well, maybe it was Rupert." And Christy Cordaro quietly suggests that perhaps it was Detective Krebs.
Mm-hmm.
Next morning, Steele arrives at the agency. He kneels to unlock the outer door of their office suite, only to find them unlocked. He opens the door.
Wonder.
Go ahead.
He's the first person there? Since when? When does this guy show up for work early?
Well, that's true. That wasn't okay. That's not where I thought you were going to go.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, you're right.
Like, every time we've ever seen him show up to work, everybody's already there. Unless, of course, he's trying to get at a client first or something like that. Like, if we're looking at season 1, where Laura comes in that one episode and she's like, if you want me to keep him away from a client, like, you got to get here first, kind of thing. But, like, nobody's there. Not even Mildred. He's the one unlocking the doors.
Yeah, which brings up another point here we'll get to in just a minute. So anyway, he's unlocking the doors, but they're already unlocked. He opens the door and steps inside somewhat cautiously. Okay, so far so good. He calls out for Laura, but getting no answer, he then calls out for Mildred. And not receiving any response and thinking he's beat them to the office, he walks toward his office and peeks in, gleefully rubbing his hands and chortling to himself how the early bird catches the whack. First clue of detective work. Right. No one's in the office, but the front door's unlocked. You've got a problem.
Well, he's not really a detective, so.
Okay, common sense. If no one is in the office, but the front door is unlocked, you've got a problem.
So then here's the question. How many head injuries are we at now?
Oh, I don't know. We haven't
been counting. Somebody needs to count for us and let us know, because this guy has had so many he's had more concussions than a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. We need to get like a count here. Okay.
Spreadsheets only support so many thousands of numbers, and I think you'd run out before series was over. But
I would love, you know what? If somebody could get a spreadsheet up to this, or just a number up to date, I will keep that, and I'll keep a tally, and we'll see like just how damaged, how scrambled his brains are. Like.
So anyway, we have a time jump, and Mildred and Laura have obviously arrived at the office. While Mildred is tending to Remington's goosebump in an adjacent office, Laura is surveying the damage. Multiple filing cabinet drawers have been opened, file folders and their contents pulled out, carelessly shoved back in, a multitude of other file folders and contents thrown all over the floor throughout all the office areas. And she comments that whoever it was, they certainly were determined or sloppy. Then she asks, almost rhetorically, what were they looking for? Steele, grateful for the ministrations of Mildred, tells her that she is truly a nurturing woman, and annoyed at what he believes to be Laura's indifference to his plight, he sourly comments, of course, that Miss Holt is a detective first.
And this is literally the episode after he got both his legs broken, is it not?
Didn't he just... Yeah. Well, he's a fast healer.
He's had a run. Obviously, we're going to assume some time has passed, but still, like, she doesn't seem to care so much that his noggin has been cracked like an egg.
Well, yeah, she seems pretty indifferent to his plight, dismissively saying that she did ask him if he was all right, to holler if he starts to feel faint.
Okay. Ouch.
And yeah.
Maybe it's just like the frequency with which he's knocked over the head at this point has made her numb to it. She's just like, whatever. You're
maybe,
conscious?
but
okay, cool.
it's
We're moving on.
This is the sort of indifference that men are accused of having. Oh, I'm sorry that you were in a car accident. I hope you're okay. How bad was the car?
How damaged is my office?
Yeah. Anyway, so while Steele is howling in pain as Mildred treats his wound, Laura continues poking through the mess. And as she does, she spots something underneath one of the file folders on the desk. It's a rigging needle, the kind they use in circuses, she says, as she holds it up, enabling Mildred and Steele, who've stuck their heads through the door, to see. And Steele, who's still annoyed at Laura's lack of concern over his near-death experience, sarcastically quips, "The encyclopedic nature of your knowledge never ceases to amaze me, Laura." And Laura, of course, continues to half ignore Steele and asks, mostly to herself, I wonder if they used it to force the door. Steele steps into the office, and Laura's conversation with herself expands to include Steele as she asks, but what does this have to do with this? And, of course, Steele roughly takes the rigging needle from her hand, telling her he hasn't a clue. But Mildred
Poor
does.
Mildred. This is one of those moments where she's just so, like, contrite and adorable. You just want to hug her.
And so she very sheepishly and with a great deal of trepidation asks them to promise not to laugh. And of course, without the remotest hint of levity, Steele tells her that he is not in a laughing mood.
Yeah.
And Mildred starts to explain that, every once in a while, she gets this uncontrollable urge to go to a séance. And please don't laugh. Laura and Steele give her cold looks, and she continues saying that, well, she's been going to this one called the Fabulous Fun Time Circus. And she told the seer there that she works for the Steele agency. So
here's a question. Supposedly, if Fresco Zapata is a seer, we know he isn't, but like from Mildred's perspective, he is, right? So why didn't she clue in that the seer didn't see through her lie about being a detective?
That reminds me of, what was it? It was, I think, one of the talk shows, late night talk shows I heard about, where the host dialed one of these 900 psychic numbers, and the first question they ask is, "Hello, who is this?"
Shouldn't you know?
Well, obviously, I got the wrong number, because if you were a psychic, you would know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So anyway, Steele, seemingly sensing that he's not going to like the answer to the question, he asks anyway what she told him that she does with the agency. And Mildred, of course, begins trying to justify her answer even before she gives it, saying that she wanted to feel important and she wanted to be something exciting, wanted an air of mystery. And of course, Steele is growing more and more impatient.
Yeah.
And obviously, Mildred realizes that she can't avoid the answer any longer. She tells him, "I told him I was a detective." And of course, Laura sarcastically tells Steele that, "I think you took Mildred's lumps for her."
I kind of like that line.
Yeah. And the scene closes with Mildred and Steele descending on Mildred. Yeah, she's not going to live this one down.
No.
Next, we see Laura and Remington at the site of the Fabulous Fun Time Circus, which during the bright light of day seems to be lacking the excitement and glamour of the night before, not to mention a noticeable lack of patrons.
It feels kind of like waking up with somebody the day after a one night stand and like realizing that the makeup is all messy and you're like, whoa, that's who I'm waking up. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't know. I'm just.
I was going to ask if this is personal experience or
no.
A Charlotte Knight novel that you read.
Charlotte Knight novel, definitely.
Absolutely, definitely, yes.
The morning after.
Never done anything like that, have you? No, absolutely not. Well, and that's one of my complaints about, rabbit hole, makeup and women. And, you've seen these, well, you may not have, but on the internet, you can find these photos of this actress as she is in public and then without makeup. And sometimes it's like, what? Is that the same person? I mean, it's just really bad.
Well, actually, what really bothers me about those pictures and the way that the magazines use them is that they use them almost to shame them. Like when you are in a film, obviously they do their makeup up, and they even use like airbrushing technologies and even CGI at this point to make their faces look as flawless as humanly possible, and in some cases de-age them. Like if you look at some of the Marvel movies and stuff, right? So like usually when you see a picture of these, there's a big headline, "Stars without makeup," and it'll be a person looking like a person in a moment that they're not aware they're being photographed, or if they are, they've got like a bad angle. Everybody takes a non-flattering picture every now and then, but magazines will use them to highlight like, oh my gosh, this person's ugly without makeup, and it's like, no, they look like a human being, like a regular human being, and I don't like the way that they use that. That bugs me.
I just my issue is that especially in a social situation where you're dating somebody or meeting somebody as a potential interest or whatever, to me it's like false advertising. And it's like you say, you wake up, you go to bed with them one night, they look like one thing, you wake up with them the next morning, they look like something totally different, and this is not what this is not, you're not the same person I was last night, was it?
Well, here's an interesting piece
and I prefer.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and I prefer to see the person as they appear. maybe a little bit of makeup, just very, very little, but I prefer the natural. So,
what's interesting is that Dolly Parton has been married for, I don't know, 50 some odd years, something like that. Like she'd been married to her husband for a long time. And all of like everything, her hair, her makeup, that's all wigs and stuff, right? Like that's not a real hair,
right.
Not a real makeup. You never see her husband. He doesn't go out in public with her usually because he doesn't like the spotlight. So whatever she looks like at home, he's the only one that knows it. And I think that's kind of interesting because like when you say false advertising, I sort of think to myself, well, nobody really believes that your eyelids are made of glitter. So that's not really false advertising in the sense that like we're aware that it's makeup. But I get what you're saying in the sense that like you don't know what the face underneath looks like.
Yeah, a lot of people, or a lot of women especially, literally change the way they look with makeup. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're a great makeup artist, but I want to see your face. I don't want to see how good a makeup artist you or your friend is.
Pamela Anderson has started going out without makeup, and there's been like she's started attending all social functions and like appearing in public without any makeup on, and she looks like a totally different person. And in my opinion, she looks gorgeous. Like Pamela Anderson has always been considered a beautiful woman, no doubt about it. Whether or not you have that's your thing, like she's but now like she looks like a very beautiful 50 some odd year old woman, and it's pretty cool. Anyway.
Well, even in Remington Steele as an example, there are certain scenes, and we haven't really gotten to them yet, where they have really made up Stephanie.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, it's like magazine.
The hair is done makeup. Like the hairspray and the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And her skin is all this perfect makeup and smooth. And then there's other scenes where we get occasionally where they've got, obviously because it's TV, they've still got to put some makeup on, but they put very minimal on, and she looks much more natural. And I like that one better.
Yeah, I think with those times that we see that, I gotta wonder if there was something in production where they were saying like, no, we want more, because like, sorry to do this, the first season of Buffy, the actress playing Willow,
of course.
Allison Hannigan, she's not an unattractive. People.
Another Buffy reference.
But hear me out. The actress playing Willow was supposed to be mousy and nerdy and socially inept and all these things, right? So in the very first episode, she's wearing like a really dowdy outfit. Her hair is limp. There's no makeup on. And the production company and whatnot, the network didn't like it. They kept saying to Joss Whedon, like, we want to put more makeup on her, make her prettier, because she's not as pretty as we want her to be. This was a show geared at young teens and young adults, right? So they want everybody to be magazine picture perfect. So there's episodes where Willow has a lot of makeup on, and there's episodes where she has none. And you can tell that those episodes where she's got a lot of makeup and her clothing is slightly more modernized is the episodes where the network basically handed down the note and said, like, she has to be, you got to make her look better. So I'm wondering if the network was maybe interfering a little bit and saying, like,
I'm sure they were.
Yeah, that's my theory, because like most of the time Stephanie is a very natural beauty, and yes, she has makeup on in the episodes. She has to because it's TV, but like it accentuates what's already there as opposed to slapping on like a ton of mascara and everything else. But anyway.
Anyway, so one of us took us down this really silly and totally unrelated rabbit hole. I don't know who that would have been. Anyway.
I would like to note I am pointing at the screen.
I know. Stop that. As they walk through the park, Laura ponders the name Cordaro and finally concludes out loud, but without giving Steele any kind of context for her remark, it has to be. And Steele understandably asks, what has to be? What are you talking about? And Laura explains that it must be the flying Cordaros, one of the great one of the great high trapeze acts. But it seems, as she recalls, that they had a terrible accident a while back. And Steele, somewhat surprised, but sounding more like he doesn't really still understand the point of the revelation, and really isn't particularly interested in doing so, tells her that she's an encyclopedia of circus lore. And Laura says, well, Mildred's a séance freak. I'm a circus freak.
Circus freak.
Okay, here's a line I don't get. Steele responds that professionally speaking, he seems to be surrounded by freaks and that he somehow feels at home. What? I mean, usually when you say, I feel at home with these people, it's because you're one of them. So
yeah,
how is he feeling like a freak?
Well, I mean, we find out later he's able to eat fire or breathe fire or whatever it is he does. So maybe he's realizing that he's also kind of a circus freak.
Well, no, he says that professionally speaking, he seems to be surrounded by freaks. So I just the comment just I don't get it. Anyway, maybe I'm missing something obvious, but anyway, Laura and Steele enter the office tent, which is observed by Guy Nickerson, who is perched on a high seat on the stationary Ferris wheel. Inside, they are cautiously greeted by Christy Cordaro, who is seated behind a desk. Steele begins asking for the owner, but Laura recognizes Christy, and Cordaro, uncertain as to why or how she was recognized, hesitantly asks if her face is on a post office wall somewhere. Stepping toward the desk and then starting to move around the desk to shake hands, Laura says that no, Christy Cordaro's face was all over her room when she was growing up, and that she wanted to be Christy Cordaro. And of course, Cordaro backs her electric wheelchair away from the desk, then maneuvers the chair around the opposite side of the desk, away from Laura.
This is an interesting move.
Yeah, and then she says, well, lucky you weren't lucky. And who are you two? I have a question.
I have a couple. So you go first, and then we'll.
If she has an electric wheelchair, why did Max have to wheel her into the séance?
One of my questions. Yep. That was, I don't know, maybe it was out of juice. It could be battery powered. I don't.
Well, obviously it's battery powered. I mean, what are you going to do? Run a long extension cord from your wheelchair to the back office?
No, I just mean it could be something that she has to. Well, I guess if you charge it, it's still a battery. Okay, I'm back. I am here. Shut up. I want to actually I want to talk about this actress for a second. Two of my questions. One question: if she was all over posters on Laura's walls, she's not I didn't look up the age of the actress, but she does not look much older than Stephanie. So
not a lot, no.
That was kind of curious to me, because unless this happened when she was like a teenager,
that's what I'm thinking.
She looked young, right? So
yeah.
But also, can we talk about this actress for a second, because she has such a striking presence throughout this entire episode. There is a sadness to her face that transcends she's supposed to be someone who got injured.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't even need I almost think you don't need the wheelchair for people to see that there's something that has traumatized this woman to the point where it's changed her completely. And the whole cast is great. I love the cast in this episode. I almost always love the supporting cast. There's rarely been an episode where we've been this person's not a good fit for the part. But she just, every scene that she's in, she just steals the focus in a way that is really, really interesting. So I don't know if you got the same feeling off of her, the same vibe, but there's just this sadness to her that you feel like you want to protect her. You want to, I don't know.
Yeah, and that could have been, that could have come off wrong.
It could have, yeah. So, it could have come off as cold. Because when she says lucky you weren't lucky, that could have come off as curt and cold and unfriendly. And it does to a degree, but there's that understanding when she says it, that underlying pain in her voice that makes you not think, oh, she's being rude or what have you. She's just, something happened to her and it destroyed her.
Yeah. So yeah, it could have, she could have, it could have been mishandled. The attitude could have come off very, very differently and very, very wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, after Steele introduces himself and Laura, Cordaro asks what she can do for them, and Steele responds that earlier in the morning, someone had assaulted their agency files and Steele's cranium, and they have reason to believe that it was someone connected with the circus. And Cordaro is Somewhat indignant, she informs Steele that while her people are no angels, they don't knock over offices or detectives. And Laura informs Godaro that Mildred had attended a séance at the circus the night before, referring to Mildred as their secretary, which kind of surprises Godaro. She tries to hide it, but there's a little surprise there that's apparent. And Laura tells Christy that they know that the séance ended abruptly at the mention of the name Turk. But Christy says, well, she was there and the séance ended because Miss Krebs was getting built. Of course, Steele challenges her on that.
She moves her chair around again, which is weird. She drives her chair around.
Put distance between herself and Steele, yeah.
It's interesting. And why admit that they were bilking her? Like, that's a weird thing to, I guess maybe to show that they've got nothing to hide, but like, or to protect the secret of Turk?
Well, deflection. A lot of people, you say something and you ask a question and the other person responds and they don't really listen to what's being said. All they hear is, oh, words came out of your mouth, so you must have answered the question, so I'll move on. And so a lot of times, all you have to do is just give a response that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the question, just respond. And people will just move on and accept it.
Every politician ever making any sort of public statement.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just making sure I understand the process. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah. Or every pretty much everybody on a witness stand, I guess, as well. But
Steele nobody ever lies.
Yeah. Steele doesn't accept it because he does challenge her response, pointedly asking if her people are always so considerate of their marks. And Laura points out that someone connected with the circus must assume that the agency is investigating them and considering what they did to the office, not to mention Mr. Steele's head. Christy could be in danger, but she dismisses the concern, assuring Laura that she and danger are old acquaintances. And then just then there's a scream from outside. Steele rushes out, and we see that one side of the chair on the Ferris wheel that Guy Nickerson had been sitting in has given way. It's no longer attached on the one side. It's hanging by the other side. And Nickerson is hanging from the back of his shirt, which has been caught on the corner of the disconnected side of the chair. And as the fabric separating Guy Nickerson from a near certain fatal fall begins separating itself, Steele rushes over to the controls of the Ferris wheel, but they're jammed, and the wheel can't be rotated to bring Nickerson down. So Steele begins climbing the superstructure of the wheel as Guy urges him to hurry because he's losing it. Steele climbs to the hub of the wheel and then out on an arm below where Guy Nickerson is suspended. Once he reaches the outer rim of the wheel, he gets a solid grip, extends one arm, and tells Guy, "Give me your hand." And as the two reach for each other, the fabric holding Nickerson above the ground finally tears, dropping him. Steele grabs Guy's outstretched arm at the wrist as the other man does the same in reverse. A perfect catch. And using the momentum from the fall, Guy swings across to the other side of the outer wheel of the Ferris wheel. And then from the one side, Guy carefully climbs down to the ground, and then Steele on the other side follows. On the ground, Steele is greeted with applause, which he acknowledges with raised arms and an over-the-head clap, and then turns to Guy.
He's enjoying this.
Yes, he is. Steele turns to Guy, and the two men shake hands, or more accurately, they shake wrists, each grabbing each other the same way that they had in the air. And Guy compliments Steele on his catch. Laura also is astonished and expresses that, and Steele modestly says, "Glad I was here." Now, I don't know how far off the ground this was, but there's only one shot in this entire sequence that I can look at and say, yeah, that's a stunt double. Everything else appears to be Pierce. And I'm sure that they had safety platforms underneath them out of the frame of the camera. But yeah, that looks like Pierce was up there a ways.
Well, and we know that Stephanie did almost all of her stuff, right?
Like in the My First Steel on the roof there with the Spanish tiles or whatever they were. Yeah,
exactly.
Clay tiles.
So this is
in high heels.
They probably didn't have the budget for like a constant stunt double, so they were just like, we'll risk it. How famous could he get anyway? You know,
Yeah, but the only shot in there that I see that I can say isn't Pierce is the long shot where you can clearly see the ground and the entire Ferris wheel, but everything else is Pierce. So, guy's got a little bit of guts. I mean, even with a platform, I mean, you look down from that thing, even with the platform beneath you, you're gonna get.
Yeah, and he has been known to get injured doing a stunt. So he does. I mean, he's not Jackie Chan. He doesn't do like every one of his stunts, but he was injured on the set of The World Is Not Enough. He sustained a shoulder injury doing a stunt, and there was a couple of others. So yeah, he has been known to do the odd stunt of his. So
yeah, he's not totally without fear. That's for sure. Yeah. Anyway, next we see Max go to the Ferris wheel controls where he pulls out a crowbar, which has been jammed against the mechanism, which is what prevented it from being engaged. Laura rushes over and asks to see the crowbar, and Christy begins to scold Max about having not greased the bearings like she told him. And he insists that he did grease the bearings and that anyway, the safety pin should have held. But something catches Laura's attention. She bends over and picks up the safety pin, and after a moment announces it's been cut. And of course, Christy Cordaro is shocked, and Max gets a look of self-concern on his face and then quickly leaves.
Yeah, Christy looks shaken here, and she's got such an expressive face that I really, I can't say enough about this actress. There's something about her that just really stands out because, like, she doesn't need to speak, and you know that she's and when she makes that line about Danger and I are old acquaintances, that would sound really cheesy. That's a cheesy line. I'm sorry, but it is.
Yeah,
like it's a cheesy line, but coming out of her mouth, she delivers it so matter-of-factly and without emotion almost that it's like it's almost like she's not afraid to die because she's already lost everything that's mattered. And it's like, wow, that's a lot that you're getting from that line because it really shouldn't have sounded that good.
Yeah. Well, what is it they say that something about a good actor can make even the most ridiculous lines sound believable?
I'm not sure I wholly agree with that because, like, if you look at Star Wars and Anakin's little diatribe about sand, I don't see how anyone could make that sound good. But
obviously, that was not in a Star Wars movie because I never saw it.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, sure. That's the definition. Like, it's only Star Wars if Erica's seen it.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, there's only 3 Star Wars movies: New Hope, Empire, and Jedi.
Nobody tell him. Nobody. There's only
I know that there's all
really
these
good Star Wars movies.
I know that George Lucas has done all these fan films.
Yeah, he got a budget for his fan fiction. That's what it was.
That's right. Anyway, back in her office, Christy Cordaro admits to Steele and Laura that maybe she does need some help, and she tells Steele and Laura that insurance companies have closed down circuses for less serious reasons than sabotage and attempted murder.
I'd say that's a pretty big reason.
Yeah. Steele asks about Guy, and Christy says he joined up a few weeks earlier. And when Laura asks what his job is, Christy says, hey, at the Fabulous Fun Time Circus, everybody does multiple jobs. Up in the air, Guy's a flyer. Down on the ground, he works booths, does maintenance, yada, yada, yada. Steele asks about Max. Christy quietly defends Max, saying not only has he been with her since before her accident, he's a pussycat, despite his seemingly gruff presentation.
He doesn't look that old either. You know, right. Like they've got these characters that are supposedly that have been, I don't know, like if her picture was on Laura's wall as a kid, you have to wonder when her accident happened. And so how long has it been? Because Max looks 20s, like late 20s.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think we get the year and it's like, was it 1970? Yeah.
We've gone back to 1970. That's how long that took us.
1979, Christmas Eve.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're looking at 79 to
83.
84.
Are we in 80? Oh, right. We're in 84 now.
But it's January from December. So it's like 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 4.5 years. Yeah. So.
Okay. So not that long, but
Yeah, but you're right. There is a bit of a time discrepancy in that. Obviously, Laura. Well, yeah, Laura could have had her posters on the wall because if it was a family act, apparently the fabulous flying Kodaros, and
she'd have to have been a teenager.
Teenager, older teen maybe, but
which makes sense. I mean, gymnasts usually start out very young too. So, but she just it was interesting because I think maybe too they've picked this actress because she plays it. She feels older. It doesn't matter that she looks young. She feels older, and it could be that gravitas in her performance and that sort of sadness in her eyes that kind of give her that, like, age her beyond what you see visually.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, then, also a lot of that's an interesting thing about Hollywood is that when you're in your early 20s, you play younger than yourself.
Yeah, you do. You play teenagers.
Yeah. And then as you get into your mid 20s, older 20s, a lot of times they have you play older than yourself.
And then when you're older, you play nothing because you are dead to Hollywood.
Or you're just dead. But
you're just dead, yeah.
But, this could be just one of those things where the actress, her actual age is kind of irrelevant because she's playing an older character. But
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It works.
It does.
I don't question it as I'm watching it.
Yeah.
Anyway, as Christy has as Christy has said that Max is a pussycat, Laura points out that even pussycats can be dangerous. And it's interesting that Christy's confidence in Max is not weakened even in the slightest.
She is so sure of him.
Steele acknowledges that at the moment they've got no other choice but to accept Christy's judgment of Max, but that it is time that Christy told them about the mysterious Turk, whose name the mere mention of had set into motion this entire chain reaction. Christy drives her chair to a wall, takes down a photo, and returning to the conversation, hands the photo to Steele, telling them that Turk was a catcher, a rouster, all about man. A few weeks earlier, during a break in a storm, Turk had decided to go deep sea fishing, and an empty dinghy had washed up on the shore. Police figured that the storm must have come back up suddenly. Police called it an accident, and nobody was ever found.
Okay, sorry. I got confused there, but then I realized break in the storm, not in the storm, because I was like, who goes deep sea fishing in the middle? Never mind. Keep going.
So, anyway, Christy admits that Turk was never going to win a popularity contest with anyone and concludes that the murder could not only ruin the circus, but that it would ruin everybody there because most of them have no other place to go. Next, Laura and Steele are walking between the small stages of the sideshow area, and Laura is intoxicated. She breathes deep, imagining that even the air feels different.
This is so cute. I love this.
Yeah, Steele is confounded to discover that the sober, rational Laura Holt should harbor a secret desire to join the circus.
I don't know. To me, this feels entirely in keeping with her character, because if you look at her and Steele in the news, and she was so enamored with Elliot Walsh because Elliot Walsh had been to all these places and been part of this adventure that was investigative reporting. Like, she wants adventure and excitement. That's why she became a private detective. So what's more adventurous and exciting? Plus, there's the connection to her dad. But, like, the circus is all about magic and excitement. And theoretically, I don't know. I've never seen one, but except on TV.
It's that way in the movies, so it must be real.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely.
So anyway, without any hint of sorrow or distress, she says that when you're 8 years old and your father you adore calls the circus dreamland, it's not hard to buy into that dream. She tells Steele that she and her father went to every circus that they could find, no matter the size, no matter the pedigree, right until the time he left. She even says that there have been times when she's imagined he ran off to someplace like this.
So here's my question. Sorry, you go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just to say, this is interesting because later in the series, we get a totally different take on her feelings about her father having left.
Yeah, well, and also we haven't gotten much about her dad, period, so far. I think she said something, I can't remember, to someone else, but not him. Oh, no, it was Elliot. It was Elliot when they were dancing in Steele in the News, and she mentioned that her dad used to dance with her like that. Like, we don't really, we haven't gotten much about her dad. And do we ever find out if she even knows where he went? Or
I don't believe so.
Did he just leave and not give a forwarding address? Is he officially a missing person? Like, we never get, I don't think we ever get that, do we?
I think that's the realm of fan fiction. I don't think we ever get anything in the series that indicates why he left, exactly when he left.
I think they say he left when she was 16. Pretty sure they give the age of 16 as the age he left. But like, and this is where fan fiction has messed with my brain, because I've read so many takes on him leaving that I don't know what's real and what's not. And I, like I said, I'm trying to think of if they've ever actually said, like, we know they got divorced, but usually when you get divorced, you don't just disappear from your kids' lives, never to be seen again, especially when he seems to have been a present and loving father from everything that Laura has said about him on the show. It seems very bizarre that, like, they got divorced and he was like, well, peace out. Have a good life, kids. I'm gone. Like, you're never going to see me again or know where I went.
The impression was that, or the impression I had, because from what you say, it sounds like you kind of read it as they got divorced and then he left. Whereas I see it from everything we get from the show, I see it more as he left and then Abigail divorced him, which kind of doesn't make any sense. My interpretation of that, because usually for a divorce to take place, both parties have to be involved in some manner. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to divorce him and he's not here, so we'll just forward the paperwork to the court and such. But
if they're missing for so long, then you can divorce in absentia, right? Like,
yeah, but usually, I know. Well, see, what is it? In order for somebody to be declared legally dead, they have to be missing for 7 years or more, I think. I may be wrong on that number, but it's...
Wow, that's intense. You'd have to wait a while.
Yeah. And so I would think that to divorce somebody who's just up and disappeared and nobody's ever heard of, it would still have to be in the realm of years. And so, yeah, it's just the whole thing just... I don't know that we ever get any real clarity as to how, or why, or the sequence of events.
In Steal Away With Me, she talks about how, like, when her father left, it basically hollowed her mother out. So whether or not they got divorced first and then he left, or after it, it just seems, perhaps this is why fan fiction loves this particular storyline, because everything she describes, like, we haven't gotten there yet, but watching Atomic Man with her father, dancing with her father, going to the circus with her father, like, he was a good dad from everything we've heard of, up until he just apparently disappears off the face of the planet. And we don't know why or where he went, or whether Laura even knows where he went. Like, does he know where does she know, like, where he lives, and she's just so angry with him that she hasn't contacted him? Or did he leave and not leave a forwarding address? Like, it's very...
Well, I've always kind of in the back of my mind had this theory, which probably doesn't, somebody will probably find a hole in the theory, because the way Laura talks about it, the way Abigail talks about it, is he left. It was unexpected.
Yeah.
And then the divorce came. And in a sense, it's almost like he went to work one day and he either never got there or he left work to come home and he never got home. And it was like he just, walked into the twilight zone.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it was very abrupt.
And maybe he was a spy.
That has been one of the fan fictions. I can't remember whose it was, but, like, there's been one fan fiction where he was with the Witness Protection Program. There's one where he was a spy. There's one where, and honestly,
Witness Protection would generally take the whole family, I would think.
True. Well, I guess it would depend on, like, if it was very clear that only this person knows about whatever it is they're supposed to know about, then the family.
Yeah, but usually you take the whole family and put them all in witness protection, even if they don't know anything about whatever the issue is. But yeah. I mean, No, it makes sense. Anyway, so sorry, I interrupted.
Within the realm of this show, none of those explanations are particularly out there, right? So, I mean, any one of them could be true, but it's interesting that if he disappeared and Laura doesn't know where he is, and she's a detective, it's interesting that she's never tried to find him that we know of. Because this is literally, or has tried it, maybe, yeah. But again, we don't know because it's never said. And when we talk about mysteries, this would be the biggest mystery for her if she doesn't know where he is, right? But she doesn't seem particularly interested in finding him. So I don't know. It's just
maybe all that has something to do with why she became a detective.
Could be, yeah.
So
more
anyway,
fan fiction. Clearly, we need more fan fiction. That is obviously the conclusion I have come to. Actually, we got a fan fiction that explained the question about like me joking about Steele waking up in a gym locker. So,
did we? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there are people doing our bidding. They are minions. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I missed that post, so
I'll have to send it to you.
Good. Send it to us. We'll put it in the show notes. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. Steele hopes that for her father's sake that he didn't run away to a place like this, he says, because, well, he doesn't say. But Laura asks him,
right?
Are you speaking from experience? And Steele admits without hesitation or embarrassment.
No, and he's perfectly fine with this.
Yeah, it's like, it's just casual conversation that for the better part of 9 months, he portrayed a fire-breathing dragon under the name the Great Savini. And of course, Laura is excitedly, incorrectly saying, oh, he ate fire? And he corrects her saying, no, he breathed fire, adding that the illusion involved treated paraffin laced with alcohol. And he pauses a bit before telling her the final ingredient, a little stupidity.
And I have to think this is funny because obviously we know that after the fact that Pierce could do this, right? So
that was one of the things that he did, yes.
Feels to me like they built the episode around this, that somebody heard somewhere, like could be Gleason, Butler, who knows, like they heard, oh wait, you can breathe fire? Oh, we totally need to write a circus episode. We're going to do this, and Pierce is going to do it. So, it's kind of funny that way.
Yeah. And I have to wonder also if Stephanie had any experience as a gymnast, because I think later, after this series, she did a movie where she portrayed a gymnast. So, I'm curious.
She grew up in a very art-based background. I think it wasn't her grandmother or something like that who was royalty.
She was a singer,
so,
her grandfather was a violinist, and her grandmother was a singer. Yeah.
So there's a lot of. It would not surprise me if she had some sort of dance or gymnastics background in her childhood, because that just feels
would fit into this episode as well. So,
oh yeah, for sure, it all fits. So they basically went, you know what, we've got two actors that can do some cool stuff. Let's make an episode where they do the cool stuff. Shut up and take my money. I'm in.
Yes. So anyway, Laura's curiosity is aroused, and she asks if there are any more secrets he's keeping from her, focusing in on the save that he made on the Ferris wheel. And I'm thinking, come on, Laura, he's nothing but secrets.
Right.
Steele says that, yes, he did a bit of catching, a tiny bit. And Laura gets a devious grin on her face and informs Mr. Steele that she's just figured out their MO on the case. Steele immediately begins to protest as we see them running off to the distance. Which is funny,
because his idea in My Fair Steele, she thought that was insane. And now she's proposing something equally dangerous. And he's like, no, this is dangerous. It's like...
Well, the difference is that his idea was dangerous to somebody else.
That's fair. Every single idea she comes up with seems to put a target on his forehead. So...
That's right. He might as well go down to Target and buy one of their shirts and wear it.
I'm sorry. I think you mean Target.
Only in Quebec.
It's not in Quebec. We did have Target in Canada, and then it went under. So.
Oh, so you don't. Okay.
Walmart put it out of business, actually. It was interesting because Zellers, our HBC counterpart for that market, the sort of superstore market, went, out of business, and Target moved in and bought up all their stores, and we were all excited. We were like, sweet, we're getting a Target, because like that was the epitome of like sophistication for us Canadians. And Walmart did not want to see Target move into Canada, because if Target doesn't do well here, then Walmart's got the monopoly pretty much, right? Like who's their competition? Giant Tiger? Nobody, right? So like they basically like pulled all sorts of shenanigans so that Target couldn't get like supplies. Like none of the stock was ever in. The shelves were always empty. You couldn't get like what Target Canada never had what Target US did. The prices were not as good, and a lot of it was due to like Walmart like kind of screwing them over. So they were here for like maybe a year or two, and then all went out of business. So Walmart won. Anyway, sorry. It's a rabbit hole. I don't know why I went down, but still bitter.
and
Still bitter.
And anyway, so let's see, where are we here? Yes, as they're running off, there's sound of sinister music, and we see a dark cloaked figure watching them from on high. Next, we're inside the big top. Steele is expressing a great deal of question regarding Laura's plan and possibly her sanity.
He has a point.
Well, Laura's plan is that they join the circus as trapeze artists. Steele argues that they're dealing with an apparent murderer, an attempted murderer, or an attempted murder, and whoever cracked his skull, concluding that the murderer very likely knows that he is Remington Steele. But Laura, seemingly caught up in the idea of using the case to fulfill her fantasies, argues that they've got to have some sort of cover. And Steele insists that, well, they could be undercover as popcorn vendors. After all, he's sure that the fabulous Funtime Circus needs fabulous popcorn vendors.
It's really cute how excited she is, though, and how like desperate he is to be a popcorn vendor. Like at this point, he's like, no, let's not do this. And she's like, we could be in the circus, and we could do. It's almost like she doesn't even care about the case anymore. She just wants to be a trapeze artist.
And I got to hand it to Pierce, that line about the fabulous Funtime Circus needing fabulous popcorn vendors, that I can see where they might have had to do several takes on that. That's a bit tricky.
Yeah, it is hard to say. It's not easy.
Yeah.
A lot of alliteration in that.
Yes. Anyway, Laura's not to be dissuaded. She's got the bit in her teeth, and she's running with it, insisting that her idea is perfectly logical. After all, with Turk gone, Christy will have to hire a new aerial act, and she was a gymnast in college and did some trapeze work at the homecoming circus. And when Steele asks for how long,
what? I've heard of a homecoming game, but never a homecoming circus.
Well, apparently she went to a very strange school.
Yeah, apparently.
But I'm thinking maybe she's over exaggerating.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't really a circus, because when Steele asked her how long she was, doing the trapeze, she hesitates and realizes that her argument just hit the weak spot.
Yep.
And she tries to put a happy spin on the fact that it was only 3 nights, but hey. Yeah, an old pro, Steele says.
She knows what she's doing.
Yeah. Anyway, Laura tacitly concedes Steele's point about her limited experience, suggesting that they just need to have a few days rehearsal, and besides, she'll have the great Savini to help her. And Steele sourly says that if he had known the lure of the circus was going to turn her head completely, he wouldn't have spent a small fortune on champagne and flowers. So when Laura mockingly asks if he would try to exploit a girl's secret desire, he suggests he might, but only if he were desperate.
He appears to consider it, which is quite cute. Also, if anyone wants to write a fan fiction where they attend a circus later on as an attempt to romance her, feel free. I'm just saying. I'm throwing out ideas. Anyone who wants to catch them is...
Well, you're right. All right. Back at the office.
I'm busy.
What?
I'm busy.
Besides, you can't see the paper anymore.
No, I can't. I can't see the computer screen. Anyway.
Just get a bigger computer. Back at the office, Laura and Steele enter, and Mildred is hauling stacks of files from the back office to her desk, which is back in its original position from season 1, by the way.
Yep, I noticed that.
Which, yeah. And Laura again has the hand strengtheners that we saw her and Steele using in a Steel It.
I noticed this. Yeah.
Yes. So
it's maybe the only other time it shows up, right? Like
I think at the time we thought that was the only time, but this is the second one. Yeah.
Okay, so along with couch watch, we're on hand strengthener watch, which doesn't have the same flow off the tongue, but
yeah.
Here we are.
Mildred asks if they have a clue as to who Freddie the File Fowler might be. Boy,
that must have taken a couple takes.
Loves alliteration.
Alliteration involving the letter F.
Yeah.
Fabulous fun times here, Freddie the File Fowler. Like, there's a lot of F's in there. There's a lot of F-bombs. Got some F-bombs in this episode.
When Steele tells her no, she says, well, when you get your hands on him, I get my hands on him. But until then, until they get her hands on Freddie the File Fowler, Laura has an assignment for Mildred. Check out Guy Nickerson. And Steele interjects that in addition to that, they have a proposition to make. And Mildred noticeably perks up at the possibilities that she's imagining. Perhaps a morale-building date with the boss.
Yeah, her time is coming. He told her that. When's her date?
And, the word proposition does have multiple meanings. So anyway, Laura
they are married, so.
Laura, only slightly shifting the blame from herself, tells Mildred that Mr. Steele wants to expand her duties in this case.
Yeah.
And Mildred, with excitement and not sensing the trap she's about to step on, asks, even after I got you into this? And Steele corrects her, saying that it's not even after she got them into it. It's because she got them into it.
It's a trap.
He baits the trap. Okay, Admiral. He baits the trap by telling her that they have to go into the circus undercover. And since Mildred is the only one who knows who did what at the séance, and Steele adopts a reluctant tone of voice, stating that they want her to join them in their undercover mission.
He doesn't love this plan.
Mildred, imagining fantasies of being a hard-bitten dick ready to lay her life on the line for $100 a day plus expenses coming to life, excitedly asks, what have you got in mind? Harem dancing? Bareback riding? Lion taming?
I would love to see Mildred as a lion tamer. I am putting my vote in for that one because I think that would be awesome. She wouldn't even need like the whip. She'd just be like, don't mess with me, bub. I worked for the IRS. The lions would run screaming, I don't want to be audited.
Anyway, Laura dampens Mildred's enthusiasm slightly when she tells Mildred that what Mr. Steele has in mind is something a bit more sedentary. Remington puts his arms around Mildred and in a confidential tone warns her that they may be dealing with a murderer. Mildred's enthusiasm is completely doused by now. Yeah. And she looks at Laura, a distressed look on her face, and then she turns back to Remington and nervously asks, how far undercover can you put me?
Poor Mildred.
Well, we see how far undercover Mildred can be put. She is portraying the bearded lady.
With the fakest looking beard I have ever sone. Like, that would fool nobody.
And with one impossibly and impractically long fingernail.
Yeah.
One.
Well, not if you're...
Not a handful of them. One.
Well, you know what they say about people with just one long fingernail.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Can we say it? Can we say it on a family-friendly show?
It's not anything that you're thinking.
Okay.
It's wow, and you have a dirty mind, sir.
No, I just know how other people think.
It's actually to do with like anytime you see movies where you've got like drug use being portrayed, specifically like cocaine or heroin, and they have like one. It's usually the pinky finger, and it's they use it to like gather up their drugs. Like that's usually what I associate a long fingernail with. Just one, because like you don't need the others.
Makes you kind of wonder. But
you were thinking something different
in this one. No, as I said, I just know how other people think, and I was anticipating
okay.
having to throw up a detour sign.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't have steered us in that direction in the first place.
I don't know. We've gotten awful close to that cliff a few times.
There's a line that we have not crossed it. It's a family show. All right. Let's keep going.
Next, we see Fresco introducing the sideshow attractions. Mona, the fat lady. Scheherazade, perhaps to reveal what is behind her 7 veils. Delilah and her snake, Boris. Uncle Sam, the tallest man in the world, who's wearing stilts, actually.
Oh, clearly. Yeah.
Gray Otter and his flashing tomahawks. And, of course, the great Savini, breathing fire like a dragon, the hottest act in town. And, of course,
I can think of at least 3 acts that would not happen today out of those lists.
Yes. Anyway, above the sideshow tents, we see the return of our mysterious cloaked figure looking down at the activities taking place on the ground. And then we see various shots of Delilah playing with her snake, Steele doing his fire breathing and then extinguishing the flames, and Laura dressed as a clown, juggling and walking through the midway.
A jester. She's not dressed as a clown, because I looked into this, because she's got a very unique look. She's got that black and white diamond sort of thing. And I was Googling this. It's for far longer than I care to admit. I was Googling this because there was a type of clown that I thought she was, that I couldn't find the name, and I still can't. But everything I Googled when I typed in like black and white diamond clown came up with jester, not clown. Apparently there is a distinction. So,
okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I felt the need to Google that even, but like, it was just, I think, unique that they had her in that outfit, that that black and white and the hat. Like, usually if you're a clown, you've got the full color and the little nose and the, the thing that creeps people out. Can't sleep, clown will eat me. Bart Simpson.
Well, maybe that's why they went with this form.
Could be. But she's
to
got
me, it's still a clown.
teardrop. The teardrop is like apparently significant to a jester, which is obviously similar to a clown, but has there's a heritage and a culture behind it, which I'm assuming is more in line with the circus. I don't know, but it is cool. Like, I like her outfit. It's cool.
So as we're talking about this, and I'm looking back at the image of that, it reminds me of the Harlequin characters.
Harlequin,
there was an
that's
episode
the word I was looking for. Damn it.
Yeah, there was a character. There was an episode of Poirot where it dealt with people dressed up. It wasn't Mardi Gras because it wasn't in New Orleans, but it was Harlequin characters and people dressing up as that, and that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah,
now
okay.
That we're talking about it.
Harlequin clowns. That was what I was trying to, because it was a very specific design, and I was like, "This is not your typical clown. This is a specific." And I was thank you. That name was driving me nuts. But now that you've said that, I've Googled it very quickly, and what the Harlequin is characterized by his checkered costume. His role is that of a lighthearted, nimble, and astute servant. It's French in origin, and often acting to thwart the plans of the master and pursuing his own love interest. Like, this is like from Shakespearean like plays and stuff like that.
Okay.
But in Victorian England, the Harlequin was routinely paired with the clown figure. The clown, with his brutishness, acted as a foil for the more sophisticated Harlequin, and the most influential such pair were the Payne brothers, active during the 1860s and 1870s, and substantially shaping the 20th century slapstick genre. So the name is taken from the mischievous devil or demon character popular in French plays. So yeah, that's kind of... Thank you for giving me that, because it allowed me to Google what I was trying to Google for like 20 some odd minutes and could not find. But yes.
Well, I do the same thing. Somebody will say something and I'll I know that.
Yeah,
and it'll drive me nuts for hours.
I taught drama for like a few years when I was working at the private school, and I would have taught a lesson on the Harlequin clown, and like... So yeah, I was a little ticked off because I'm like, black and white checkered costume clown. I know there's a name for it anyway. All I came up with was jester, but I knew that wasn't specific enough. And now that you said it, that's what I was looking for. So.
Hey, I managed to pull one out. What do you know? Woohoo! A point for me.
This is all scripted. We have planned every single bit of this podcast. Nothing is a surprise. Anyway, definitely not Googling.
That was my line earlier.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, then we see Mildred at a booth where she's been stationed, and she is awarding a stuffed bear to a woman. And behind her, we see a very large ornate chest prominently on display, and it's beneath a sign, a very simple sign that reads, Grand Prize. Then we hear a sailor from the other side of the booth hollering, I won! I won! And Mildred, flirting with the sailor, smooths her mustache with her ridiculously long fingernail and says, You in with me, cutie. Not impressed with Mildred, the sailor holds up a brass ring and excitedly tells her, I win the grand prize. Mildred tells him that fortune has smiled and she will give him the grand prize. And she turns, picks up the chest from the shelf, and begins to hand it to the sailor, but Laura rushes up and calls to Mildred, calling her Matilda, because that's her undercover name, stopping her from giving the chest away. And then she tells the sailor that the ring entitles him to a chance at a grand prize. But until he's won 5 rings, the vault must remain closed. Handing him a stuffed cartoon-like bird, she tells him in a somewhat saccharine sweet voice, Do try again. And the sailor leaves, bitterly disappointed in the clown.
He's not happy.
Yes. And it's like one of those, yes, you win. No, but you didn't win. You won a chance. Well, I just took a chance. Yeah, but you won another chance.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because every year, they do it on with the app now, and I'm a little ticked off. But like every year, Tim Hortons, anyone who lives in Canada will know what I'm talking about here. In like March, April, they used to have the roll up the rim contest, right? Where you roll up your rim of your coffee cup, and it would tell you that you've won, or usually it just says, please play again. But they would be like, 1 in 6 are prizes. And I would always joke that I've won the chance to play again because it would always say, please play again whenever I bought anything because I never win anything. But like, can you imagine this sailor getting home if Laura had not intervened, okay, and they'd given him the grand prize and he'd gotten home and he'd be like, it's just this crappy Bible. It looks super old. Like, what the hell is this? And he tosses
they couldn't
it out,
even get me a new one?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it looks all battered and like, what is this? And he tosses it in the garbage or something. That would... a crappy circus. They're giving out Bibles as the grand prize. Like, not that there's anything wrong with a Bible. I'm just saying, like, if you open it expecting to see something fancy and it turns out to be an old, battered looking Bible, I'm guessing you're not going to think that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, there was something recently where somebody along those same lines found a painting in like a garbage can that had been thrown out, and it's like $1 million painting.
Oh man.
So yeah, I mean, stuff like that. Can you just imagine somebody found it in their attic? What is this? This piece of garbage. Just throw it out.
Who's this Monette guy? I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway, Mildred apologizes, or Laura chastises Mildred, telling her that the treasure chest is the lure. It stays forever. No carny who's been in the business more than an hour would ever dream of giving it away. And Mildred apologizes, saying that she's just not at her sharpest in a beard.
That's fair. Neither am I. So I have to shave it.
Yeah. But before she's finished her apology, Fresco sidles up to the booth, and Mildred starts giving him in the eye, and even starts stroking her beard. But of course, Fresco is not interested in flirting with Mildred.
That's flirting, stroking her beard. She was like stroking her mustache for the sailor. Like,
hey, when you got it, you use it. But Fresco's interested in flirting with Laura, aka Miss Woolsey.
Yeah.
And he does the usual overdone self-promotion and asks Laura, perhaps you've heard of me. And Laura assures him that his reputation has preceded him. And Mildred continues to try to flirt with Fresco. She seconds Laura's comment about she's heard of him and he's got a reputation, although her tone is definitely different than Laura's.
Yep.
Fresco calls Mildred his bearded beauty, saying, I'm told you are the mother of this delicate petal.
She always ends up being the mom. Poor Mildred.
And she's obviously annoyed at being called Laura's mother, but she assures Fresco that in a somewhat lascivious tone that she's still a girl at heart. Turning back to Laura, Fresco asks,
she flirts.
Oh yeah. Turning back to Laura, Fresco asks her when he shall have the pleasure of exploring her future.
Sure.
Although I'm thinking he has something else in mind he wants to explore.
Yes, he
Anyway,
does.
Laura plays into his fantasies, telling him that she'll give him a date just as soon as she can get off the midway. And I think Fresco is surprised that his really bad pickup line actually worked this time.
Holy crap.
And he excitedly tells her that he'll be waiting for her at his establishment. And he leaves. And of course, Mildred is astounded and incensed, asking Laura if she's really serious, saying, he just two-timed me with my own daughter.
Yeah.
Laura tells Mildred that yes, she is serious. After all, somebody may have left a clue at the seance, and this is a convenient opportunity to get into the room. And she does, though, make it quite clear that she's not really thrilled at the opportunity.
No.
Or at least the way the opportunity presented itself.
I don't think she likes to flirt to get what she wants. Like, it's part of the job, and she'll do it if she has to. But
but not only that, but I mean, look at who she's got to flirt with.
Yeah, he's not exactly the cream of the crop. That's true.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you after shaking hands with him, you have to wipe the oil off.
Yeah, well, to be fair though, I if I had the choice between Fresco and Chip Carstairs or any of the bachelors from Steele eligible, I'm going to go with Fresco because it means I don't have to read the Prophet. So
I think that's the only deciding factor between those.
Literally the only one.
Yeah. Anyway, back over near the sideshow stages, Delilah, with Boris draped around her neck and holding onto his head in her hand, descends from her stage towards Steele, who's descending from his stage. And she begins coming on to him, telling him, love your flame, Wonder Buns. And asking how they got so lucky.
I love this nickname, Wonder Buns. I don't know why I got such a kick out of it, but I did.
Anyway, Steele deflects, suggesting that perhaps they'd previously worked together somewhere on the circuit. But she shoots that suggestion down, saying she'd never forget that face. And then she introduces herself.
Face. That's what she's talking about. His face.
Let's not ask. Never mind.
She just called them Wonder Buns. I think we know what she's thinking.
The connection there, I don't even want to know. Anyway, she introduces herself to him, saying Delilah's the name and excitement. And she pauses on the word, holding Boris up close to Steele's face to begin with, and then moving his head down past his chest to a point just below his belt, where she holds it for a moment, as if to emphasize her words, prompting Steele to jump back. And then she says, is my game.
Any questions as to what kind of snake that is? Because I have some theories.
Any questions as to what she? Never mind.
The actual.
It says boa. I think somewhere it says boa.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
I was thinking
we don't
either
have
Burmese.
The script.
I was thinking either. Well, it would say boa for the attraction. My guess is, but I'm thinking Burmese python or ball python because my aunt had a snake that looked just like that. She kept it in her apartment. And they are. I
thought you were going to say she had a husband that looked like that.
No, they are typically like if you see like a movie or something like that, they're usually using a python like a Burmese python or something because they're not going to like squeeze the life out of you. They're safer.
Okay. But yeah.
I like
so anyway, she makes it pretty obvious what she's
yeah. I don't think she's subtle. Nobody's subtle.
No.
Nobody is subtle.
No. But then we see Laura walking through the midway with Fresco, telling him that she's worked seances before, and she flirtatiously asks him to show her his layout, suggesting that maybe she can work a seance with him sometime. And just as he's promising to bear his most treasured secrets, I talk about innuendos throughout this whole thing. Delilah comes rushing up, drapes Boris around Laura's neck, and threatens, I've got news for you, Miss Woolsey. I don't cotton to homewreckers, and neither does Boris. And Fresco, who's obviously been down this path before, has a ready answer, assuring Blossom Girl that It was strictly a professional conference. But Blossom Girl isn't buying it. She tells Fresco, you and your bimbos, doesn't fidelity mean anything to you?
Hello, hypocrisy table for one.
and reservations for the following night.
Hello, pot. This is the kettle.
There's so many questions I have, and we'll get to them when we get there. Oh yes. Anyway, as you said, I have written down here, which is, of course, totally hypocritical of her, considering how she was just trying to get Remington to light her fire just moments before. Anyway, after she's nagged Fresco, Delilah warns Laura, you come near my husband again, and Boris will reduce you to a size 1, as she wraps Boris completely around
She
Laura's
probably
neck.
already is.
I don't know.
I'd be very... Well, maybe this was before vanity sizing really took hold, but if today... At any rate, Stephanie would be a size 0 or 00.
What is vanity sizing?
Vanity sizing.
I'm sorry, I'm an ignorant man.
Yeah, so you can walk into a store for the most part and buy a pair of jeans, and they're all going to be, if it's a 32 or whatever, 36, 38, whatever, it's going to be the same. Whereas with women's clothing, specifically if they go by things like numbered sizes as opposed to the measurements,
which I've never understood numbered sizes.
Well, because it allows them to do this thing called vanity sizing, which means that what they will do is they will manipulate what a size 2 is, what a size 3 is, what a size 4 is. So it makes you feel better or worse, depending on the store you're in, about your bodies, right? So you could walk into one store, try on a size 4, and oh my gosh, I'm a size 4. Look at this, they fit. But then you go into another store, which is maybe a bit more like, say, for example, your size 4 store is your Walmart or your kind of generic supermarket store. But then you go into an upscale boutique. You're not a size 4 there. Okay. You're a size 8 or a size 10 or, whatever that happens to be. And all of a sudden you feel like crap. And so the vanity sizing comes into play where they basically manipulate. Yeah, they make it up, right? So, but with doing so, the sizes got smaller and smaller and smaller. So what would normally be a regular size 6 or a large, if you're going small, medium, larges suddenly are very small. So now you haven't changed, but suddenly you're an extra large or a 2X, and you're not really sure why. And that's because of that. So back in the 80s, Laura might have been a size 2 or a size 4. But now, if she were to go into a store and this be that same size, should be a 00 or something like that. Because it's not fun. It feels like we're shrinking or getting like that episode of MASH. I don't know if you ever saw the episode MASH where they're like messing with Frank.
Frank,
they like make his pants bigger, and what happens next week? He gets taller. So like this is kind of the same thing. Only the joke is on every woman ever, and we never get pockets. Okay.
Anyway, so Laura, snake around her neck, unwraps it, hands it to Fresco, and makes a hasty departure. But as she's leaving, she hears Delilah accuse Fresco. What are you trying to do? Pay me back for Turk? So what? Maybe she and Turk had, as Fresco calls it, a professional relationship. Sarcasm quotes.
He was the Wonder Buns before Steele.
Could have been, I guess. Yes, but this all leads into my question later on. Anyway, next we see Steele walking through the Midway, and he's wearing his great Savini getup when Guy calls out to him, calling him Woolsey. And apparently they have not been formally introduced, so Steele rectifies that oversight, putting out his hand, introduces himself as Nigel Woolsey. Guy says he just wants to thank him again for the rescue, and that Christy told Guy that Steele / Nigel and his sister / Laura will be working the wire with Guy. And of course, he's curious how they got the job or how they heard about the job. Steele tells Guy that, they've been out of work for a while, and you just hear these things. And Guy, obviously not buying into the story, says, it's funny because Kirsty didn't exactly put it into the want ads. Steele says, we got friends. And Guy, growing ever more suspicious, points out that you've got an accent. Your sister doesn't. Adopted. Yeah.
I got some questions here.
Okay.
I got some questions. Firstly, Steele makes a big deal of saying to Laura that people would know that he's Remington Steele because Mildred already said she worked for the agency, right? So
right.
I'm not entirely sure if the cover is necessary to begin with, since they seem to be operating under the assumption that most are going to know that who he is anyway. But putting that aside, why the hell are they siblings? What is going on here? Because they have posed as a married couple in the past. The Peplers, the infamous Peplers. He liked being a Pepler. What on earth made them think that this was a good idea to say that we are related? Okay, like, putting aside the fact that they are in a relationship and would have to be very careful. Otherwise, they'd be, siblings.
Questions raised.
Questions, yeah. But, like, he has an accent, as Guy just pointed out. This is the dumbest cover ever. So stupid.
Obviously, they did not think this out very well.
No, married couple would have been super easy. Super easy.
So Steele, his excuse is that he's adopted. That explains the accent difference. And
sure.
Then he quickly changes the subject and asks, is the job safe? After all, what happened with Guy this morning, Steele suggests that he and his sister are a little nervous. And Guy deflects, saying, well, accidents happen. And Steele pointedly asks, a cut pin is an accident? And didn't his predecessor, someone named Turk, didn't he have an accident a few weeks back?
He's bad at this right now. He's bad at this.
Well,
like, usually it's Laura that fumbles the ball in these cases, but Steele's not doing so hot.
Well, Guy's not buying any of it, and he's had enough. So he just bluntly tells Steele, if you're nervous, don't go up. And I think it's partly noise. I think it's partly annoyance and partly self-defense. Because, if you think about it, if Steele's going to be the catcher and he's nervous, that's going to affect his performance. And that's going to affect everybody's safety. It is
dangerous. And he's right. Like, if you're nervous, you shouldn't be doing this, right? Like, this is not for the...
It comes off as being confrontational, but I think I think it's easy to interpret it as confrontational for the wrong reason. I think part of it is it's just purely self-preservation. But anyway, Guy turns and walks away, and he nearly runs into Christy, who's being pushed in her chair by Max. Again, pushing a battery-powered wheelchair.
Yeah.
Anyway, as Christy and Max continue past Steele, Max has questions about this guy Woolsey. Is he there because of what happened to Turk? Christy, clearly not wanting to admit that there are things going on that she doesn't want to admit, tells him not as far as she knows. But Max presses the point, asking, if you did know, would you tell me? And Christy is silent.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think this is designed to be a bit of a red herring, but
yeah, it is.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm not saying that the acting here was bad or anything like that. I just don't like it as a red herring. I like Max.
I like Max too.
So that's purely my reason. I like the guy.
And maybe we'll get there when we get to Max's character, but I think that Max's character comes across as almost childlike in his behavior. And I wonder if nowadays we might look at a character like that and interpret that he's maybe neurodivergent in some way, like either on the spectrum or ADHD or something like that. But I mean, obviously that's not what they're necessarily going for here. It's not like that's in the script, but like, I kind of wonder if that's how I saw Max, I guess. It's definitely meant as a red herring. Whether or not it lands is definitely questionable, but I do like Max. I like Max too.
Yeah. I think when I was younger, the term that would have been used to describe Max is he's a little slow.
Yeah, which is not I would have heard that same term, and it's not a great term. Now, actually, we know what makes the brain tick.
If you don't know what the words are,
yes, absolutely. If there's no language for it, then that's what you're.
But I mean, even now, there's a lot of people. I mean, there's so many. you talk about the spectrum and neurodivergence and all this other stuff. There are so many different variations and
yes.
similar things that have different names, and they are different, and you can't say this term and it's mean this over here because they're separate things, and that creates a problem. So I can see where a lot of people would just default to, okay, he's a little slow, and they don't necessarily mean it as a negative. It's just that's the only word they have in their vocabulary to describe it because they don't know what the proper term is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Max. Anyway, we got a time jump, and then we see our trio all dressed in black sneaking into the darkened park toward the room.
Did they take Mildred shopping for crime clothes? Mildred's got her burglary clothes. Did they go out on a special mission to buy Mildred some crime clothes?
Maybe she just had already gone out and bought them on her own because, she just knew that one day she would have the chance.
They were like, they said, or they pulled her aside and said, okay, Mildred, here are the things you're going to need to do this job. You are going to need to dress business casual. You're going to need to bring your pencils to work because Steele won't have his. And you are going to need to purchase a set of crime clothes. Don't ask me why. There may be a spear gun involved, but just do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just so excited that
we have the office uniform, and then we have the after hours uniform.
Yeah, the day to night look. You need a set of crime clothes.
So anyway, they're sneaking toward the room of mysticism and mystery, which was Fresco's seance parlor, and inside they begin snooping around. Laura questions Mildred, where was Fresco during the seance? Right there. Where was Guy? He wasn't there. Steele bends down to peer under the table where Fresco was seated, and he looks up at the bottom of the table, then comes back up and says, magnets. He begins activating controls one at a time, and the events of the prior evening begin to repeat. The wind, the spotlight, the glass ball.
I wonder if this was disappointing for Mildred.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I mean,
because she was all in.
It's kind of like, I guess, when you go see how movies are made, or you get the tour behind,
or the magic trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, is that all?
Well, that's how they do it.
Yeah. Anyway, there was what was it? I knew a guy who's an amateur magician, and we'd gotten talking about one of his tricks once, and I was asking him about how a trick was done that I'd seen somewhere else. In fact, I think it was in a TV show, and he wouldn't tell me. It just that irritated me. Yeah, really.
Okay, sir, wherever you are, that was mean.
Anyway, so Steele tells Laura and Mildred that his guess is an electromagnetic relay connected to the ball through a magnet. And he begins to look around, spots a trunk, opens it, digs into it, finds the switch box with the names taped to the front of it. And he returns to the bottom of the table where Laura and Mildred are still crouched, telling them that Turk's name isn't programmed on the dial. Thinking out loud, he asks, when does a magnet lose its draw? And after a moment's hesitation, Laura responds with, when there's a stronger magnet. And simultaneously,
feels like science class.
Hey. And simultaneously, they all point their flashlights at the floor. Boy, I'm getting tongue-tied. My lips are getting, my cheeks are getting numb. And Steele says out loud what they're thinking, the basement, which again leads me to think that the circus has not moved for quite some time because it's built on a basement.
That's quite the setup for.
Yeah. Quite elaborate for a moving event. Anyway, Steele tells Mildred to keep her eyes on the board. Then he and Laura make their way down to the basement, unaware that the mysterious dark figure is watching. Down in the basement, they find a ring of large electromagnets mounted beneath the floorboards of the room above. They're wired to a controller, and Steele calls it the better mousetrap. Laura suggests that if Guy wasn't at the seance, he very well could have been the one down here rigging it. Steele suggests that he had had a strange round of cat and mouse with Guy earlier in the evening, but asks what would have been his purpose in conjuring up Turk's name. Just then, the door to the basement, which they had left open, is suddenly slammed shut and locked. Outside, we see the mysterious figure opening a water valve, and inside the basement, water begins pouring in from an open water pipe. Isn't it convenient how these basements always just have a water pipe there that's disconnected halfway through, and it's just barely hanging on until the water.
Super safe. This health and safety, HR needs to be contacted because there's like a lot of issues with this little circus. I'm just saying.
Yes. Anyway, Steele and Laura began pounding on the door, calling out to Mildred. Upstairs, Mildred hears indistinct sounds emanating from the basement, but pointlessly speaks to Laura. I can't hear what you're saying, but nothing's happening.
She can hear that they're yelling. Like, it doesn't sound like they're just trying to send a message. They're like, help,
she doesn't know what they're yelling because they know that it's going to be hard for Mildred to hear. And so they're hollering, Mildred, is anything going on? Is the ball moving? And so she doesn't know what they're hollering. So, yeah.
I don't know. If I heard somebody yelling, like indistinctly screaming, I'm going to assume that maybe something's wrong, given their line of work. I'm just saying.
Just saying, yes. Anyway, downstairs in the basement, the water level is rising, and Steele and Laura continue shouting at Mildred, who has by now crawled underneath the table and is still calling out that she still can't hear what they're saying.
I still don't know what you're saying.
As the water level continues to rise to a panic level, their impending drowning inspires Laura. Use the better mousetrap to signal Mildred. Remington lifts Laura onto his shoulders to reach the controls. I guess the villain must have had a ladder with him there earlier and taken it with him, because if she can't reach it, if he can't reach it, then that person couldn't reach it. Anyway, side note.
Which you think would have gotten him noticed, right? Carrying a ladder in the basement.
Or carrying it out, yes.
Yeah.
In the basement, Laura begins operating the controls, and upstairs, Mildred has returned to the top of the table and begins watching as the glass ball moves. S. O. S. Sauce?
Sauce. Yeah, what's that about?
Oh, then she realizes SOS. She takes off, but will she be in time? Laura has realized that the electromagnets and the water won't mix. She cries out to Steele, we'll be fried, parboiled, basted.
Somebody hasn't eaten yet. She's about to die and she's hangry.
Yeah, I like his line. Spare me the recipe, Laura.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mildred arrives, finds the door barred. Long day. Mildred arrives, finds the door barred, and removes the bar, opens the door, and a torrent of water spills out, knocking her stunt double backwards. At Laura's loft, next, we see the trio contemplating the attempt on their life. They conclude that they must be onto something, or at the very least, they've asked somebody too many questions. The report on Guy Nickerson is back, and it seems he's just finished a 4-year stint in prison. Dubbed the High Wire Bandit, he was apprehended while hanging by his feet on the outside of the prestigious Conover Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, which I did not find any reference to.
No, I looked too. Couldn't find it. Of course, I couldn't remember Harlequin, so my Google skills were somewhat impaired this week.
On the inside of the museum, the Gutenberg Bible that they had was no longer had there. It was gone. But Guy didn't have it on him, and it was never found. Steele comments that people just don't end up hanging by their feet from a museum ceiling without somebody's help. They conclude that the accomplice could have been a trapeze guy, and that he would probably be the one who got away with the Bible and probably left his partner hanging. And the robbery took place on Christmas Eve, 1979.
I had some fun facts about the Gutenberg Bible because I was curious.
Okay.
So I thought I would, just because I thought it was cool. It was thought to have been, or people mistakenly attribute it as the first book printed using mass-produced metal movable type. But it wasn't actually, it was the earliest major book printed in Europe using mass-produced metal movable type. But it helped introduce printing in the West, but the process was already well established in other parts of the world. Chinese artisans were pressing ink onto paper as early as the 2nd century AD, and by the 800s they had produced full-length books using wooden block printing. So this was new to Europe, but not to elsewhere.
If I remember correctly, in other forms of it, they used blocks that represented whole words. But I think Gutenberg's was the first one to use individual letters that could be combined to create the words.
Yeah.
I may be mistaken.
They had a system. Actually, no. It says what I found, sometime around the mid-11th century, a Chinese alchemist named Pai Sheng developed a system of individual character types made from a mixture of baked clay and glue. Metal movable type was later used in Korea to create a jikji, and if I've got that wrong, I apologize, which is a collection of Zen Buddhist teachings. And that was first published in 1377, some 75 years before Johannes Gutenberg began churning out Bibles in Germany. So they were doing this elsewhere, just not in Europe. However, interestingly, only 49 copies survive today. Out of some 180 original printed copies of the Gutenberg Bible, 49 still exist in library, university, and museum collections. Less than half are complete, and some only consist of a single volume or even a few scattered pages. So if this were an intact Gutenberg Bible, it would be worth quite a bit.
All I can say is that every time I hear Gutenberg Bible, I think of Willow Branch Leaf Wilson from Home Improvement.
Okay.
Who portrayed Mrs. Gutenberg in an episode of Home Improvement. Had to throw that in there.
Maybe they have her Bible.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not an actual Gutenberg. Maybe it's this woman. No, I'm kidding.
It's a prop one, yes.
It's a prop Bible.
Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. Christmas, 1979. Steele asks Laura if that rings any sleigh bells because she has chipped up at the word 1979 Christmas. And yep, it happened the same night in the same town as Christie's accident. Laura asks Steele, based on his experience, which Mildred doesn't question.
No, well, Mildred probably just thinks because he's such an expert investigator and sleuth that he would know this.
Yeah, he would just happen to know how much a Gutenberg Bible would sell for. Yes.
Sell for on the black market. But
yeah.
Laura's referring to a whole different side of expertise.
Yes. So Steele recounts that one had recently been sold as a legitimate sale for around $2 million, but in this case, a stolen copy, the vanishing accomplice would have to vanish for quite a while before being able to safely sell it. And in the meantime, Guy served 4 years in a maximum security prison without a single infraction of the rules, without revealing his accomplice. And Laura and Steele surmised that Guy's patience would have gotten him out before the accomplice could sell the Bible. So Guy would be able to track down his accomplice and get his share. And so they conclude that Guy Nickerson is a very determined man and possibly a lethal one. And worse, they fly with him on the high trapeze.
I like that this whole scene is done while they're swinging on these little swings that they've rigged up in Laura's loft.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really neat visual for us as we're watching them talk, and it's also Laura's loft is really the only place you could do this because she's got such a high. It's an industrial building, so the ceilings are really high up, and you could conceivably believe that she could put this little thing together. Obviously, you couldn't do it in Steele's apartment.
Yeah,
but
no,
it's neat. It's a good visually. It's a really appealing scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, then we have a montage of Laura and Steele practicing on that equipment in the loft that you just referenced.
I love a montage.
I know you've said that before. So. But the interesting thing is that often as not, they're failing to connect. So obviously, yes, it's
cute though. This is a really cute little montage. They're just adorable. They're smiling. They're laughing. They're it's got little cute tin type piano music. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost flirty.
Oh, it's very flirty. They land on the bed and they're laughing and smiling at It's super flirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah.
But wholesomely so.
Yes. Anyway, we have a time jump, and then we see Laura in the circus office with Christy, and they are talking as Christy is going through a trunk of clothes. And Laura's asking, who's with the circus in Fort Worth? Max, Fresco, Delilah, Turk. Was Turk the catcher in the act? No, in those days, that was the big time. Turk was just a rigger, and he was just starting to learn to catch. Well, perhaps he learned more than he let on. Laura takes notice of a costume that Christy's pulled from the trunk and admires it. Christy tells Laura that that was the costume she was wearing that night, the night of her accident. Laura smiles at Christy and says, I'm not superstitious, and then asks, may I? And Christy seems pleased at the thought of Laura wearing the costume, which is kind of interesting because usually in that type of situation, somebody might be superstitious about it, but it's almost like she's seen this as a redemption and breaking the curse.
Yeah. It's like Laura is not her, but if Laura wears it and, quote, flies in it, then yeah, like, I don't know. It's sweet. You're right. It is sweet. And it's probably one of the few times where she doesn't appear so sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, Laura asks if Christy knew Guy back then at the time of her accident, and she says only by reputation. He was what they called a comer, and she'd only actually met him a few weeks earlier. And did Christy know that he had a prison record when she hired him, and everyone on the circuit's got a past, and there isn't any connection between the theft and her accident. Everyone was working at their stations that night. Well, how can she be sure? The accident had to have traumatized her. Can she even remember what she was doing the week before? No, Christy's just telling Laura what people told her. People who might have a vested interest in lying to Christy. And whoever was at their stations that night and whoever wasn't, that's really still a mystery.
So I want to love this exchange. I really do. But something's off in Stephanie's delivery when she says one of her lines. And to me anyway, when she says to Christy, like, how can you be sure the accident had to traumatize you? Can you even remember what you were doing a week before? That, it feels almost condescending. Or not condescending. That's the wrong word. Patronizing. Like, can you even remember? Like, do you even know? Like, and it's a legitimate question. So I'm not questioning like the fact that Laura said it, because she's right. It was a traumatic thing. It was 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And it, like, speaking from experience, we were in a car accident, and 2 years later, one of the people involved in the accident decided to sue everybody involved in the accident, even though we had nothing to do with that particular car. And then, of course, it didn't actually go to, like, I didn't go into discovery until 2 years after that. So by the time I sat down to give my account of what had happened, and that was the first car accident I'd ever been in, I couldn't remember which way was up. So, like, it is a very legitimate thing for Laura to say, like, are you really sure you know where everybody was? Because, like, trauma can do weird things to the mind. But, like, I don't know, just something in the way she delivers that line felt
Well, I think in
off.
this particular case, and I'm not saying that your reading of it for yourself is invalid or incorrect. I just think that in this particular case, what it may be is that Laura is dealing with trying to challenge. It's not the fact that Christy doesn't remember. Laura's trying to deal with the fact that Christy thinks she remembers because A, she wants to remember it that way, because right. B, that's what everybody she trusts is telling her. And it's one of those things where she's built up this wall of protection around her belief that, well, this is what happened because I know this because people told me this. And Laura's actually not challenging Christy's memory as much as she's trying to get Christy to challenge her own acceptance of what people have told her.
Oh, for sure. And again, it's...
And that might be the kind of thing that you have to be a little bit harsh on.
Yeah. It's supposed to come across as kind. It's supposed to come across as her sort of kindly nudging her out of that comfort zone that you're speaking of. And just that one line, the rest of it comes across perfectly. Like when she says, when Christy looks down and admits that she can't, that she's just repeating what others have told her, then Laura says some of them might have had a vested interest in lying to you. That feels very compassionate. That line, when she says it, feels right on, spot on Laura Holt. Like she's recognized that this woman has been through a lot, and she's acknowledging like these people might not be your friends, but like doing it in a way that's kind and empathetic. I don't know what it was about just that one line, but it didn't land for me. And you're right, it could just be my own personal read on,
but I think it was supposed to be a little bit harsh intentionally, because it's no. That's you don't even know what was going on that night. You need to accept the fact that you don't know, and you're just believing what people told you. And
yeah, that's true.
I mean, I understand how you're interpreting it. I'm interpreting it as, one of those, okay, we've got to cut the little X in your leg in order to get the poison out. Yeah, it's going to hurt, but we've got to do that in order to get to this next step. And I think that's how I'm reading it. Anyway, I could be wrong. I probably am. Anyway.
No, I mean, you're probably right. I just, yeah.
Anyway, next we see Steele. Okay, here we come up. I got to be careful here. Steele's visiting Delilah, who is flirting up a storm.
Oh, yeah.
Suggesting as if she didn't know. Oh, if I'd have known you were going to stop by, I would have changed into something a little more flattering. Because, she doesn't cotton to home wreckers. When it's her home and somebody else is doing the wrecking. But when it's her doing the home wrecking, if somebody else's house, that's different.
Then she comes in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a question. I'll get to it. When Steele says that he just came by for a chat, she smiles and tells him that she likes a man who has more than one dimension. And besides, her ball and chain might be coming back at any minute, which doesn't really seem to be a concern to her, because she's got a smile on her face when she says it.
Really doesn't. She seems perfectly happy with bulldozing
Okay,
forward.
thank you for that, because I'm setting you up.
Okay.
Steele begins to ask her questions. Has she known Christy a long time? Sure. Were she and Fresco there the night that she took her fall? Yes. Anything funny happened that night? Is this a game? No, it's just that one hears these things on the circuit. Well, Delilah is offended that he's only interested in asking her questions. Forget it, Winter Buns. You think that just because you got a great profile and a flat stomach, I'm going to spill my guts to you? She invites Steele to leave and makes for the door. And at the same time, Fresco walks in. How long has he been standing outside the door?
Good question.
And why? Obviously, long enough to hear most of the conversation, because he knows that Steele was asking specifically about the night of Christy's accident. He's been listening for a while.
Yep.
I have so many unfamily-friendly questions.
Like, they both seem to know that they're cheating on each other, and only one of them seems to be not allowed to do it.
No.
Oh, okay. That he was maybe listening because he enjoys the listening part?
It's more about, yes, this is a participatory event for all of us.
Well, no, that seems very family friendly. That seems very friendly. They're all friendly. Let's just go with
that. Yes.
Yeah.
That is definitely a relationship that
they could use some
best
counseling.
Leave unexplored any further.
They could use some counseling.
Yes. Alternative lifestyles. Yes. Anyway, Fresco tells Steele / Woolsey that he doesn't know what the word on the circuit is, but Delilah's trying to protect him, because despite the fact that she seems to throw herself at other men and that he seems to make a habit of pursuing other women, they actually care about each other.
It's crazy, but I kind of get the impression that they do. Like,
I am under the impression that them each throwing themselves at other people is part of their game.
Yeah, it's an act. I get that impression too, that like neither one of them really expects it to go anywhere, but they play it anyway.
I'm thinking something different on that.
Okay, well, we've seen where your mind has gone this whole episode, so frankly, yeah.
I blame the writer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sure, okay.
Where were we? Oh, yes. He realizes that this kind of a relationship of caring for each other, that is, might seem like a joke to somebody as young as vital as Steele. And Steele says, no, love is never a joke. Then he apologetically asks if he was prying about Christmas Eve. Fresco tells him yes, because he flew with Christy. He was her catcher and her teacher. And when she fell, his nerve fell with her. And if it hadn't been for Delilah, her loyalty, her indulgence, he might be on the bum somewhere. And he concludes by telling Steele, live while you can, Woolsey. Luck runs out fast.
I like this bit. It humanizes Fresco, who at this point, up until this point, is basically just kind of a sleazy joke. And it gives him, like, him flying with Christy and then that accident really hammers home why he wouldn't, A, want to do it ever again, and B, why he would maybe become this sort of snake oil salesman, because it's a lot simpler than what he had done before. So yeah, it's a good conversation.
Yeah, and it's a good way to keep it all within the circus realm of this group of people that he was, he had this historical tie to Christy that was involved in her accident. So yeah, it explains a whole lot about the guy. Yes, absolutely. In the main tent, Max is working on securing the safety net beneath the trapeze when Laura and Remington enter. He's taking down one of the net posts. He tells them he doesn't like the look of it, and he's going to go get a different one. Steele begins inspecting the net and the rope securing it. And then once Max is out of earshot, Laura nervously tells Steele that she's beginning to suspect everyone could have been Guy's accomplice. Fresco was a catcher. Turk was learning how to catch, and who knows what Max was learning. And since Christy fell, what?
Sorry, I just have a question, because now that you mention it, like, Fresco was flying with Christy, and Laura had posters of the flying Corderos all over her wall. Is Fresco related to Christy, and B, would Laura not have recognized him?
We could possibly explain that by saying that the flying, the flying Corderos, or the fabulous Corderos, what was the term? That the family act broke up for some reason, and so Christy went on her own with the circus and hired Fresco to be her catcher, to replace maybe a brother or a father or cousin or whatever that had been her catcher originally. But no, yeah, that's a good point. They could, maybe they are related. Like
maybe like he's
third
an
cousins twice removed by whatever. Anyway, so let's see, where were we at? Yeah, Fresco was a catcher. Turk was learning to catch, and who knows what Max was learning. And since Christy fell because her rigging was faulty, any one of them could have been responsible for that as well. Remington agrees, saying that whoever the accomplice was, he was way off his game when he got back to the circus that night, knowing that he'd left Guy hanging from the museum ceiling. Laura doesn't understand why Guy's still hanging around, since he must have the Bible. Steele says, well, if he does, he's killed for it, and so he may be hanging around to avoid suspicion. Guy enters, and Steele greets him with a sarcastic, Nickerson, a true star, late for rehearsal. I like that.
I like it too.
As Guy and Laura begin climbing one ladder at one end of the net to get up to the trapeze platform, Max is holding the ladder steady for them, and Steele climbs up a rope at the other end of the net. Laura seems nervous, and she slips as she's climbing, but she holds on and continues to the top. As Laura and Guy are getting set on the platform, and Steele's looking across from the bar on the other side, a pulley block on a rope, hanging from the top of the tent, suddenly comes flying toward Laura and Guy. Steele sees it, shouts a warning just in time for the two to get out of the way, with Guy and Laura falling to the safety net below, and Steele dropping a moment later to join them.
I am really, really glad that you are hosting this episode right now, because in my notes I have written, hangy hook thingy falls from ceiling. I had no clue what that was, and I was like, well, I don't have to worry about it because I'm not the one who has to say it, so glad it's you.
Hangy hook thingy. I'll have to remember that.
I don't know what that thing was. I was like, it's a hook. It's a hangy hook thing.
Well, after ensuring that Laura's fine, Steele demands to know how this happened. Guy says he doesn't know, but obviously Steele, Woolsey had good reason to be nervous. Guy turns and looks accusingly at Max, who, with a combination of fear and panic on his face, turns and runs. Next, we see Remington and Laura outside, walking it off. Laura's still trying to catch her breath, but Remington is a bit intense, saying that before they go back in there, he intends to have a showdown with their rigger. After a moment, Laura tells Remington that the case has changed. They don't have the same murderer. Her thinking is that since Guy was on the platform with her at the time, he couldn't have been the murderer, but Steele suggested maybe he's just keeping them guessing.
Well, he also was potentially the victim in the Ferris wheel thing. So
yes,
that they already know that someone targeted him.
Well, she suggested that it was earlier. She had kind of in passing suggested that it was a diversion as well, or maybe that's coming up later. I don't remember, but yeah, they kind of attributed that to being a diversion. But yeah, I think at this point it's pretty apparent that he is a target.
Yeah.
And Laura's theory that, or Steele's suggestion here that it's just a diversion, it's just to keep them off balance. It's shaky. It's shaky. Anyway, Steele leaves her and tells her he's going to go find Max, but Max is nearby. He cautiously comes up behind Laura, asking if she's okay. She assures him that she's fine. Max tells her that he checked that equipment out earlier and that everything was as it should have been. Then he asks if she believes him. She gives a somewhat non-committal response and then asks why he ran away when it happened. He lowers his head and tells her that with everything that had been happening around the circus lately, he figured he'd get the blame. But Laura doesn't accept it. She tells him that if that were the real reason, he would have stayed to defend himself. She pauses and then asks if it bothers him to see a woman fall. The answer, of course, is that it does. Now, up to this point, Laura's tone with Max has been somewhat stern. But at that question, she sees something in Max's reaction that changes her attitude from disbelieving to compassionate. And
that's the empathy and the compassion that I guess I wanted from that line with Christy when she says, it bothers you to, like, it's almost as if, like you said, she sees something in Max's expression and connects the dots and realizes this is a man who's not running because he's guilty. He's running because this has happened before.
Yeah.
And
the bad memory, the association. Yeah. All of that. So she gently says, she believes that does bother him a lot. Then she asks what happened that Christmas Eve. And Max reacts with anger and slams his fist down on an adjacent railing, and she's taken back.
Poor Max. Like, poor Max.
Yeah, she's taken aback at his sudden act of violence, but his anger is toward himself, not her.
Yep.
And he begins crying. He tells her that if he had known what he was doing that night, Christy would still be flying. He was only 19. Turk had gotten him the job with the circus, doing odd jobs, cleaning up, setting up tents, but every now and then he'd let Max help him rig the nets. But that night, Turk was late. He called and told Max to get started setting it up. And Laura's dismayed at the realization that Max had rigged the performance alone. Now, as they've been talking, Steele had arrived behind Max, unnoticed by Max. And Steele says, "Go on." Well, surprised and maybe fearful that he's being surrounded and set up to be ambushed, Max turns in a panic to face Steele, but Remington assures him it's okay. He's with friends. Breathlessly, Max continues. By the time Turk got there, the show had already started. Max asked him to check things over, and Turk had said he would. But his head was some other place that night, and afterwards, Turk said he'd cover for Max as long as he kept his mouth shut.
Poor kid.
Yeah.
Like, this is a kid, right? 19 is young. He was bamboozled by Turk. He was lied to and made to feel as if he were responsible, when in reality, like, if your supervisor is the one telling you to do something and you then ask that supervisor to check and make sure you've done it correctly, even if you screwed up, it's the supervisor's job to ensure that the work you did was done, right?
Yeah.
So even if Max had made a mistake, which I don't think he did, or if he did, Turk didn't look, It's Turk. It's on Turk. It's on nobody but Turk.
Yeah.
But Max being a kid,
Turk
poor kid.
made it. Turk shifted the blame to Max. He made Max believe that he was at fault. And he's going to be nice. Max, I'm going to cover for you.
Oh yeah.
I won't throw you under the bus. I'll just pretend that it was not a mistake. I won't even mention your name, Max.
He manipulated him into carrying that guilt for 4 years. Like, that is so awful. Like,
yeah.
And if Max is neurodivergent, as he sort of, the actor seems to be playing the character, that would hit even harder, because for certain neurodivergencies, the concept of, like, there's an absolutism and a right and a wrong. Right? There's fair and there's unfair. There's right, there's wrong. There's fault, there's not fault. So if Max was thoroughly convinced by Turk that he was the one at fault, he was the one at fault.
Yeah.
And ouch.
Yeah. I know. I mean, yeah, I like Max and I feel sorry for him. I mean, it's it's hard not to feel sorry for the guy right now.
And the actor, like, again, with the performances, like, in what is essentially amounts to what, a 2-minute scene, something like that, he gives this performance that conveys this range of emotions and tells us the whole story of this character. And all of them, like, I gotta say, one thing this show does really well that other shows don't do as well is every episode you need to have an ensemble cast of supporting characters in order to make your mystery work, whether it's Castle, Lucifer, any of these shows. And sometimes they just, because of the necessary 45-minute structure and the way you have to plot the episode and the fact that you're usually doing like a B plot with your main cast, a lot of the time your supporting actors get relegated to caricatures. Right? This is the bitchy ex-wife. This is the philandering husband. This is the whatever. But this show manages to give them depth week in and week out, even if it's just like 2 minutes worth. And it's really amazing the way that they do it, because they seem to have this knack for picking the perfect actor most of the time and then giving them, I don't know, like just like a few lines of dialogue that tell their story.
Well, and in this scene, you see Max, and you see I'll say it. He hates himself for what happened, because he totally blames himself. And if he could, he would leave because the memory hurts him so bad. But his loyalty to Christy and the sense of guilt and obligation and responsibility that he has, or that he feels toward her because of his screw up, he can't leave. I mean, it's just, you're right. And a whole range of emotion in this scene from one guy.
Because this would be re-traumatizing for him in the sense that if he, like, that looked like an accident, at least to Max, because Max doesn't know the larger story of what's going on, right? So he almost saw another woman fall the same way Christy did. So he's going to be reeling from that, because again, it's his job.
Stirring up all those emotions of what happened before.
And he says to to Laura, he's like, I do you believe me? Like, it matters to him that she believes him, because he's afraid. He's scared, A, that they're going to blame him when he knows that at least this time he wasn't at fault, but B, because he just saw something that was almost as devastating happen to Laura that happened to Christy.
Yeah. And you're right. He does a great job on this. So anyway, Laura asks about guys joining the circus a few weeks earlier. And she asks Max, did Guy have much to do with Turk? And Max replies that Guy had only arrived a day or two before Turk's accident, and that he did see them together a couple of times, but they weren't getting along well. They weren't yelling or anything, but there was something going on between them. So next we see Laura and Steele. They're walking across the nearly deserted grounds, and we see the mysterious figure again looking down at them from a high perch. Steele is disparaging Turk about letting a 19-year-old kid take an extended guilt trip, about leaving his partner hanging like Peking duck, as he puts it, for the police to discover. But Steele realizes that Laura isn't paying attention. Laura complains that this case has never made sense. And it still doesn't. If Turk was the accomplice and he was trying to get away from Guy, why try to get away in a dinghy? And if the dinghy was washed ashore, why wasn't Turk's body washed up somewhere as well? And simultaneously, they both realize that not only do they have a whole new case, they have a whole new suspect.
Like the, what kind of market is there for wet Bibles and Steele's comment of pious mermaids? I don't know why, but that one had me chuckling. Like, that was a good line.
Yes. So anyway, they eagerly vow that no matter what, free-falling pulley blocks, ransacked offices, Ouija tables with minds of their own, all of that notwithstanding, the show must go on. Well, we jump ahead and it's evening. Yes. Jump ahead and it's evening. The evening's events are starting. Fresco is doing his ringmaster duties and calls the assembled crowd to direct their attention high above the center ring to the aerialists of the flying trapeze. Introducing Woolsey, and Nickerson. Mildred, is present, observing as the act begins. Guy swings, flies over to Steele and catches him, and then flies back, returns to the platform next to Laura, who is wearing Christie's costume. Fresco announces to the audience that, I have an issue with it, but anyway.
Well, with the,
we won't go
the
there.
makeup? Is it the makeup again? Or? Oh, no, what's the problem with the costume?
Family
We're
friendly.
Going there.
Family
We're
friendly.
Going there.
It's got a flesh-colored piece in the middle.
Well, yeah. That's kind of the point, right?
That's my problem.
Oh, okay. It's funny that you mentioned that. I don't know why this is coming up twice, but with Dolly Parton. But like, there was a big hullabaloo on the internet about Dolly Parton wearing that Dallas cheerleaders outfit that she wore for one of the games or what have you, and people, I don't know, losing their minds about a 77-year-old woman dressing like that. And I thought, it's clear that's flesh toned, like that it was a bodysuit because nobody has sequins naturally on their midriff. And B,
they don't.
It's Dolly Parton. She's never been subtle. I'm not sure why this is a surprise now, right? Like
subtle like a jackhammer, yeah.
Yeah. See, the actual Dallas cheerleaders wear far less on a daily basis. Anyway, so it's just kind of funny that I kind of like the flesh tone bodysuits or flesh tone sort of like outfits that you see like gymnasts and figure skaters wear, because I think it creates an interesting illusion but that to me looks tasteful.
I'm not big on illusion.
yeah, that's true. I don't know. I like it. I like and I think the colors work for Laura with this outfit. The only thing that doesn't, and this makes sense for the context it's being used in, is the heavy makeup, because under the big lights of the big top, you'd need to have makeup that heavy in order for it to be seen. But like when you see them like running through the whatever, you can tell like that doesn't suit, but it suits for what it's being used for.
Yeah, it's appropriate for the purpose there, because that is how, from what I've seen of the circuses that I went to, that is how they do the makeup, because of the visibility and the lights. Yeah,
you need to see it.
So, yeah, but we could do without the the insert.
I like it.
I didn't say never mind.
I like that there's a fashion watch every week now where we critique the outfits in the show. It's good.
Yes. Anyway, let's see. Next, Fresco announces that their daring aerialists will attempt the over and under passing leap, whereby two flyers pass each other in midair. And of course, Laura swings over, flying to Steele, who catches her. And as they're swinging back and forth, Guy is swinging toward them, and he releases the bar and flies toward Steele, as Steele releases Laura to fly back to the bar made vacant by Guy. And then one more swing. Guy joins Laura on the bar, and then they return to the platform with applause. Fresco announces, "Watch as Miss Woolsey will perform a splits across and half turn on the bar. Silence, please."
He's very good at this.
Laura performs the routine, then ends being held by Steele. He compliments her, saying, "So far, so good." But Laura seems to be starting to have some concern that they may be going through all this for nothing. But Steele urges patience, noting that their man has got to start getting desperate.
He kind of sounds like he wants their lives to be put in danger. Like, patience, someone will try to kill us soon, I promise. Like,
yeah.
Your death is important to us. Please hold.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, as they're swinging, preparing for Laura to return to the other side, part of the trapeze assembly gives away. That is holding Steele and Laura. Steele loses his grip on Laura, who falls, but manages to grab a rope for himself. Steele calls out to Matilda, who lowers a looped rope to Steele. He steps into the loop, swings, and grabs Laura from the... No, Laura grabs the rope. Sorry, my bad. Misread my notes.
You're fired.
Thank you. Laura, okay, so let's try that again. Steele loses his grip on Laura, who falls, but she manages to grab a rope. Steele calls out to Matilda, who lowers the looped rope to Steele. He steps into the loop, swings over, grabs Laura from the rope from which she is dangling. Got it right that time. Then drops her safely to the net below. A moment later, he drops into the net next to her. They look up and they spot Turk in the top of the tent. And so does Delilah and Fresco, and Max and Christy, and of course, Guy. Turk slides down a rope to the applause of the crowd, who seems to be under the impression that it is part of the show.
This is quite the reveal, considering he was pretending to be dead. Like, you can tell he's a performer because this is very dramatic.
My question is, one, how did he get up there with nobody seeing him? And
Also,
two, how was he up there, standing there with nobody seeing him?
Yep. All of those things I have in my notes. Every single one.
I mean, there's not a whole lot up there at the top of a circus tent. I mean, they've got the poles that come together, and they've got a bunch of other, mechanisms and assemblies and ropes and such. But I would think that a guy standing there would kind of be obvious.
You would think. Yeah. Like, somebody should have seen. Yep.
Silly us. What do we know?
Yeah.
Anyway, on the ground, Turk runs out of the tent as Laura and Steele dismount the net and then begin their pursuit. Outside, Turk runs to the booth where Mildred, had been working earlier, grabs the chest that she had earlier tried to give away to the young sailor, and then the chase carries on to the merry-go-round. Turk gets caught between Laura and Steele, then tries to get off the merry-go-round and away, but he loses his balance, falls, drops the chest, which breaks open, revealing the missing Bible. He attempts to pick up the Bible and run, but Laura and Steele are on him. Steele tackles him while Laura snatches the Bible from his hands. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew has come out to get in on the chase, but Guy breaks away from the rest and comes up behind Laura, snatches the Bible from her grasp, and takes off. As Laura takes off after Guy, Steele hands Turk over to Max, who has come equipped with a tire iron. And Steele
Good
also
old
begins.
Max.
Yes,
I hope he gets his pound of flesh. Like, just take it out.
I hope so too. And Steele also begins the pursuit of Guy. Laura shouts after Guy, "Don't be a fool. You'll never get off the midway. Why spend more time in maximum security?" Guy stops running, and Steele and Laura dramatically stop behind him, no longer pursuing him. Okay, TV moment.
Yeah.
With Fresco and Delilah coming up behind them and also stopping dramatically. Yeah. I wouldn't have waited. Not in real life. Anyway, Steele chastises Guy, saying, "It's the lure you're after. You should know better than that." Guy pauses, looks at the Bible, and admits that he does know better than that because nobody wins the lure. He hands the Bible to Steele, then hesitates. Then they grab each other's wrist in a shake.
I like this. I know it's cheesy, and I know I shouldn't because it is. But I like it.
What's wrong with cheesy?
Nothing. I guess I shouldn't apologize, but like, I like the fact that
I like rom-coms, and I don't apologize for it. So don't apologize for liking cheesy.
Fair. I have apologized for far too long about liking the movie Titanic, so I guess this counts too. But
which I've never seen, but anyway.
I guess I like the fact that Steele appeals to his honor, I guess, as a carny or as somebody who like works with this life. Like, it's a lifestyle for him. It's not just a job. And yes, he's also a thief, but it's not the threat, because Laura says, "Why spend more time in maximum security?" And yeah, he does sort of hesitate, but like, that's not what inevitably ends up causing him to give it back. It's the acknowledgement that I guess on a larger metaphorical scale, nobody gets the brass ring. Nobody gets the big prize. That life is about the pursuit of it. And he knows that because he works in a circus where people are chasing that. They're chasing happiness, or, they want to be entertained, or they want to be amazed, or whatever. And so he hands it back because he realizes it's not going to make him happy, I guess. I don't know. I may be reading far more into that than is strictly necessary, but again, not scripted. This is all off the top of my head. I don't know. I like the fact that he's no longer, like, they part as friends too, like that shake at the end.
Well, maybe not friends, but at least they acknowledge each other, and they respect each other's position. Yeah.
So I don't know. I like it.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with it other than the stereotypical
it's the dramatic pause. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to stop chasing you because you stopped running.
Because you stopped. Yeah.
No. Anyway, back at the office, Laura is on the couch, head in Steele's lap. They're not on the floor.
I was going to say, I would like to add, she's not necessarily, she's in his lap. So I'm not counting that as proper. That is not proper use of a couch.
Yeah. A rather intimate position to be in the office.
That is not proper use of office furniture. So I'm still counting it.
Well, at least they aren't on the floor. So
they could be. They easily could be. Or on the desk.
So anyway, the two of them are summarizing the case. Guy never believed Turk was dead, but he believed that somebody at the circus was working with Turk. He knew all the regulars worked the shills, so he rigged the seance to see how they'd react. After all, any experienced carny knows how to rig a seance. Or an experienced con man, Laura concludes. Steele hesitates, uncertain how to respond. But then he says, okay, I'll take it as a compliment. Laura rises to a sitting position, and they both lean forward toward the miniature merry-go-round at the office, toward the miniature merry-go-round on the coffee table. Yes, that's true. It was a gift to Laura from Christy. Mildred enters and reminds them she'll be gone a couple of hours. For lunch? Really? Anyway, it seems
she gets some time. Like, she's clearly able to make her own schedule.
Yeah, we're going to shut down the office for a few hours while Mildred goes to lunch. Okay, fine.
She's not even asking. She's just like, by the way, as I've told you, I'm going to lunch. I'm going for a couple of hours. Bye.
Yeah. Or not told you. I'm just going to go.
Yeah, I'm just going. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not for lunch. It seems a friend of hers has told her about a new palm reader. Laura expresses dismay at the news, but Mildred insists, well, you can never tell. There might be romance in her future yet. Steele stands up, telling Laura that maybe Mildred's right. They should go give it a try. But Laura grabs his arm, stops him, and tells him that they will settle that question between the two of them, won't they? And they sit back down on the couch. Laura grabs the lapels of his jacket, pulls him toward her, and we freeze as she gives him a big old kiss.
So when they have no clients in the office, are they just making out in the back offices? Like, this is... It's an awkward way to behave at work, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And from the design of that couch, well, no, I was going to say it looks like it could fold out, but fold down like a futon type thing, but I guess maybe not.
Again, family friendly, sir.
I didn't say anything. Anyway, that's it. Yes. End of the episode. You got anything else to add?
No, aside from that, I really enjoy this one. Like, there's episodes where I enjoy, except for that one. Well, I have to have at least one criticism. There has to be one, right?
Okay,
I really enjoy this one. Like, there's other episodes that we've enjoyed, but there's been structural problems or maybe character issues. And even if the episode's good, there's nitpicks, right? But this one, I don't know.
It's fun.
It's a fun one. Yeah, it's a good episode.
It's a different environment than we typically see them in.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the fun of it. Plus, the whole circus thing and the montage. And that montage was a fun montage.
It's a cute montage. Usually their montages are to do with, like, well, like in Steel Knuckles and Glass Jaws, where they're like training or placing the bets or what have you. But this one's just like the two of them smiling and being all happy, and it's cute.
Yeah, happy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if that's it, then we will remind everybody about the website, www.SteeleWatching, where you will find show notes. I was going to say Amazon links to movies, but we don't have a movie in this one.
No, we don't. Which is kind of surprising.
But if we can get that link for that fan fiction
I'll find out if we're allowed to link it. But yeah,
yeah. If the author doesn't mind, we will put that in the link there, or we may go back to the episode in question and add it to that episode's show notes. And then there's other things that we link to, such as
the Twitter, Facebook page, and Instagram page, as well as the officially unofficial Steel Watchers Facebook fan group, where we just kind of hang out and post fan fiction and all kinds of other fun stuff, including discussions and pictures and fashion watch and couch watch and everything in between. So it's lots of fun. And join us.
Yes. Next episode will be yours. It's Blood is Thicker Than Steel, which has
next episode we get the two most irritating children on the face of the planet,
and perhaps one of the most I want to say cringeworthy scenes in the series.
Oh, I honestly can't think of what you mean by that. So that'll be interesting. I have to rewatch
when you rewatch it. Well, maybe I'm just misreading the scene, but yeah,
could be. I don't know. But like I have never wished a child harm.
Mm-hmm. But these two, you would.
These two, I'd be running over them with the bus myself. So this will be an interesting discussion.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll admit that they are. Yeah. You wouldn't mind throwing them out the window at 65 miles an hour. Yes.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, shut up.
See, that's where we're going to be. That's where it's going to happen.
I hear you. Anyway, all righty. If that, I don't have anything else. If that's it.
No, that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.